Good evening, everybody. Welcome to round 9 of not Automobilista Australia. That comes a bit later on in the week. Welcome to round 9 of Assetto Corsa Aussie Down Under Series here using the Assetto Corsa platform. And it's the midway point of a 3-race triple header, I guess you can call it, of night races to round out 2020 before we have a little bit of a break and then come back at the beginning of 2021. It is the Singapore Grand Prix circuit tonight, a circuit that has been on the Formula 1 calendar since 2008. It was the very first night race to occupy a slot on the Formula 1 calendar, and it's a circuit that we find ourselves sort of a bit scratching our heads as to why the machinery from the 70s and 80s is doing laps around here. But nonetheless, it's a floodlit circuit, and it makes for a great spectacle. So thanks for your company watching along tonight. My name is Steve DeVries, and the man who's been opposite me for a good chunk of this season is here as well, in Lewis Wedding.
Yep, good evening. Currently out on circuit, just getting a couple of laps of this track. It's very well lit, looks nice in with content manager with Sol and all the lighting and stuff like that. And yeah, it's not a circuit these cars you'd really ever see. I don't think there'll ever be an event like this in real life, but that's the magic of video games. I mean, in Sims, I mean, you can take pretty much any car around any track, and that's what we're doing this evening.
That's precisely what we're doing this evening. You're right. It's sort of the ability to mix and match and create different series and different tracks is something that we don't see a lot in modern day racing nowadays. I think the closest thing I can think of that might have been running around Singapore on top of Formula One might have been like the celebrity races, or maybe a Porsche Cup race that was a support act at the time. But very, very rare do you see like touring car racing at a circuit like this. But as you said, the beauty of video games and the ability to mix and match and make something unique out of something that never used to see this sort of circuit before. But that's where I guess it sort of looks a bit more on this calendar here. The next circuit on the calendar after tonight is much the same in the Bahrain International Circuit. Again, another night race, the third of the triple header of night races to round out 2020, because then we go on a nice long extended break after the end of November, and we pick it up again on the other side of 2020 New Year into 2021, the first weekend in January. We pick up the remaining 5 races to finish out the season. So Calder Park, Sandown, Lakeside, Winton and Newcastle are the 5 circuits remaining after we get through tonight and Bahrain next week. The point standings coming into tonight has been a bit of a talking point, Lewis, because there were a few little incidents that had to be reviewed after the last race last week at Bathurst. A few that were deemed as a racing incident, but the big one for Dane Liccardo was he ended up with a 20-point penalty deduction for an incident that we saw. The initial part of that wasn't his fault, getting contacted in the braking zone heading down to Forest Elbow, but he had the car in reverse and accidentally rolled back into John Wright and was therefore docked 20 points for that, and I think probably pretty fairly too. I think he's probably gotten off a bit light from that one.
Yeah, it's a fairly fair penalty in any series, in whether it be real life or sim racing. If you just reverse straight back onto a live racetrack, or even just rejoin a live racetrack, you're opening yourself up, to a big accident and certainly hefty penalty points. So a worthy penalty. Hopefully, he'll learn his lesson for next time out, or tonight, and for the rest of the series. But in some respects, a 20-point penalty, he can count himself just a little bit lucky there.
Yeah, I think he can count himself extremely lucky. He would have had probably a lot more severe deduction if, as you said, if it was a real world or a more high spec, more notable series like an iRacing. They would have given him a huge smack on the wrist for that one. So it has got off fairly lightly. It has brought him a little bit closer to the Volvo of Jamie Nankervis there in 5th place, and did drop him away from Terry Marwood, who is not here tonight. But that was obviously a 4-point deficit between those two guys before the penalty was applied. And the other people that have sort of suffered a little bit from that one Bathurst round last week, Nathan Higginson having all sorts of gremlins, lost a huge chunk of time and points. He came into the night only 20 points in arrears of Shannon Wright, and then now finds himself 77 behind. He had a very torrid time. He was the second last of the classified finishers. The only one who didn't finish ahead of him was John Wright. He ended up 11th out of the 12 runners that contested the night, and the only man who didn't finish was Brendan Ross, who only got a handful of laps in. And you can see there, rounding out the top 10, bit of a displacement. So Scott Murrell has jumped into the top 10 aboard the Nissan Skyline R31. He, and along with a couple of others, Brian Walsh and Brett Willis, who were just on the outskirts of the 10 there, finally managed to jump ahead of the points that Scott Nolan had amassed over the couple of rounds that Scotty had contested. And he'd sort of been clinging on in the top 10 for a few rounds now, and he finds himself now out of the 10 down in 13th place. So I think, as we pointed out, he's probably doing a few selected rounds, and we might see him back a little bit later on in the year, Lewis.
Yeah, we may see him later on, but I think the big thing was you did touch on Nathan Higginson. It's hard to believe just a couple of rounds ago. I mean, he was leading the championship, would you believe? And now he finds himself almost 80 points behind Shannon Wright, and it's only 60 points ahead of Terry Marwood. Liccardo himself, he's jumped up these last few rounds. Only 24 points behind Terry Marwood. And with Terry not being here this evening, Dane could jump up into 3rd place in the standings. And maybe even if he has a good back end of the season, might give Higginson a little bit of a run for his money. I don't think Higginson's quite got the consistency or pace to knock off Shannon Wright. But it's going to be an interesting battle, I reckon, Steve, in the battle for second in the championship. So when we do have Terry show up for rounds, as we know, he's very, very quick, and he's capable of knocking off Higginson and Liccardo. But if he's not here every week, it's going to give those guys every opportunity to finish second.
Yeah, spot on. And on top of that, Terry has jumped into 2 different cars across the course of the season. He started in the VK Commodore at Adelaide and proved that he was very quick for those opening couple of rounds, taking a first and a third. And the only other first place that he's had since then was the first place finish at the first round of the race of the Bend. That was round 6. And since then, he's massed up a total of about 8 or 9 podiums across the whole entire series. His worst result, actually, Terry Marwood, is 7th place, opening race of Symmons Plains. And I think, if memory serves me correctly, he had, I think it was a disconnect very late in that race. So very consistent, very, very quick. It doesn't matter what machinery he jumps into, he's always a threat. So the 2 VL Commodores either side of him there on the standings, as they are on your screen now, have definitely got their work cut out for them. And don't discount Jamie Nankervis, again, in 5th place. Again, another nice, consistent driver. He's out there tonight. Good opportunity for him to grab a handful of points with Terry not here as well, and sort of vault himself right into that battle for the minor placings at the end of the season. We take a look at the race information for tonight. The Marina Bay Street Circuit in downtown Singapore. It's not the longest track on the calendar by far, but it is the longest lap in terms of time. 23 corners, just a hair over 5 kilometres long. 20-minute qualifying session about to get underway in a few seconds' time, and 2 15 lap races tonight. So going to be around about 35 minutes in the seat for these guys. The layout tonight is the 2013 to 2014 iteration of this circuit, so it was the 3rd iteration out of the 4 that have existed since the circuit came to be in 2008. Most of those changes are minor. We'll have a bit of a talk about some of them as the night wears on. But Lewis, this is going to be probably one of the biggest torture tests of the night not so much of the night, of the season for these guys.
It's going to be a really interesting one for the drivers, because it's not like a really busy circuit for these cars because it's so big. But if you make a slight mistake coming out of a corner, because it is a big Grand Prix circuit, even for Formula One, I mean, they don't really, they've only recently gotten under the 1:40 mark around here in Formula One. So, you know, in the times here, I think the fastest we saw in practice is 2:28 or, you know, something close to that. If you make a slight mistake in the mid corner, it carries all the way down these fairly long straights for these cars. In a Formula One car, it might be fairly busy. In these cars, it's all about technique. And if drivers don't get that right here, it's going to be quite messy. And that middle sector, there's a couple of flip-flops that in these older touring cars, if you're not careful with your weight transfer, you'll go round. So that's something that these guys are going to have to look out for, especially on some worn tyres, I'd imagine, by the end of their stints.
Yeah, completely agree. The first part of the lap, it's pretty much all about straightaway speed. Second part of the lap is sort of, has a few straights, has a couple of flip-flops, and then you're right, third sector, a whole sequence of left and right corners. You can see there, sector 1 marker just comes up before they get to turn 7, Memorial Corner. Second sector marker is on the run down the Raffles Boulevard, all the way down to just before turn 14, before they turn to the right, and then all those left and right kinks under the stadium grandstands, and then around the Singapore Flyer, the last couple of corners on the lap to complete the 5 kilometre course. Just got some cars that are out there at the moment, so we'll go to live pictures. They're out there on their first laps, out laps, as it turns out to be. That's the thing too, Lewis. It's a long lap, as you called it. 2 minutes 28 was the best lap time we saw in the practice session. 2 drivers managing to clock 2:28s. This man on screen being one of them. Another one, a newcomer, to clock the 2:28. But the out lap costs you a significant chunk of time as well. There's no way to shortcut it on a circuit like this. You've got to get out and you've got to get on with it.
I suppose there's 1 or 2 places you can shortcut, but in the end, it's not going to gain you any significant amount of time. So your outlap itself even if you're pushing, you're looking at probably about 2 minutes 40 because you do have to exit the pits and go to the inside of turns 1 and 2. And it does cost a little bit of time here. But Shannon about to start his lap. He'll be hoping to replicate the 2:28, but it may take a couple of laps for these guys to get into the swing of things, it being such a long lap here.
So now he's running through turns 1, 2 and 3, and then turn 4's just right here, but it sort of really doesn't exist. Just a little sweep to the left. And now this is the part in Formula 1 where we normally see the DRS sign. Oh, big whack of the wall just before that DRS sign we were about to point out. And this is where the DRS zone is in Formula 1.
And that would have killed his momentum. Not a lot, but it would have at least wiped off at least a tenth of a second, probably 2 to 3 tenths of a second, just grazing that wall, because it would have slowed him down by a K or two. When you want to be accelerating, it sort of would have slowed him down a little bit. So that is something to look out for here on these qualifying laps. Outside of that, though, he's looking very, very clean.
Yeah, it looks pretty clean at the moment, and you did hit it pretty much right on the head there. It was under acceleration where he had that whack of the wall. He was just starting to get on the throttle, and the car just understeered a little bit and grabbed the wall. This is the part of the circuit that has changed in the iteration we're running tonight. Remember back in the day, they used to call that the Singapore Sling chicane. It used to be a series of corners. Actually meant that it was still classed as one corner, being turn 10. But it's gone from being a very sort of quick left over, right over, left, which you could almost straight line that chicane back in the day. And it's since been removed. It got taken out at the end of 2012. Now it's just a one continuous left-hand corner.
It's a bit of a shame, but that triple apex chicane, you could straight line it. F1 drivers certainly tried straight lining, but the nature of those curves, if you hit them the wrong way, the F1 cars would just bounce straight up and you went in the fence. A few drivers in 2008 found that out the hard way. I think Kimi Räikkönen, my favourite driver, managed to do that, and I think Timo Glock and one or two others also managed to do the same thing. So it's been changed a few times, but still quite an interesting circuit, and I have to say it's one of the better street circuits Formula 1 have been to, and certainly a very good spectacle.
Oh, absolutely. Very good spectacle being under lights as well. The lights tonight sort of make the grey tarmac surface look a little bit washed out under lights. Just the way that I guess the track design has been put together. Opening lap for Shannon Wright, 2:28.6, so straight on the money without wasting any time whatsoever. Very, very neat and tidy lap. And if we look a bit back through the field just to pick up the next laps, Liccardo's 2:32.6, so 4 seconds adrift of Shannon Wright's time. And only not very many guys out on circuit. I mean, it looks like a few drivers may have aborted some laps. Next man that's going to set a time is Ozrob.
Yeah, a number of drivers, seeing Rosella on my screen here, just warming up his tyres at the moment.
Oh, big drift through the second last corner by Ozrob, the Singapore flyer. And a 2:33, not bad for his opening stint. We haven't seen much of him in the practice session. Jumped in very late and already finding a way to come to grips with this circuit. Got a long way to go though.
I'd expect that car to be quite good in the back end of the circuit. Not quite as powerful as the VL, and it's comparable to the Volvo in terms of top speed, maybe a little bit down on acceleration, but is quite nimble through the corners. So I'd expect Ozrob, once he does get some more laps under his belt, a lot of his time is going to be found in the final sector where there's a lot of corners and left and right, short shoots. So look out for that. And the mid sector do have some corners, but you've still got a bit of high, you do need a bit of power to get through there. So the final sector for the BMW is going to be the stronger one for that car.
Also noticed he did a very similar thing to Shannon Wright on his opening lap, getting very close to that wall on the outside of turn 5. A few drivers just sort of look like they may be overdriving it a little bit, not picking up the outside ripple strip at the right point. So maybe just pushing the car a little bit too hard to try and make corner pace and therefore lap time, and just understeering a little bit wide. Brett Willis somehow manages to dive his car into position 3 in between Liccardo and just fractionally ahead of Ozrob. And looking at the timing, looks like we've got...
he's missed a gear.
Oh dear, he has.
Also had a little bit of slide through the that little hairpin after the bridge there too. So he's dropped a little bit of time, but outside of that, it has been quite a solid lap. So what can he muster here in the final sector?
Oh,
he's certainly having a dip.
Yeah, he's got fistfuls of opposite lock there at turn 14. And this is the part of the circuit where you remarked you expect the BMW to come into its own, so to be able to dance left and right. Same way that we expect the Volvos to be. The cars that we've seen through here so far have all been able to handle it pretty well. Remarkably, the VL Commodores are not too bad through here, but they're not sort of at the same level that the Volvos or the BMWs are. Although that being said, one of our newcomers tonight, Luke Rosella, managed to wrestle that car through there, and it was only what was it, about 0.05 of a second off Shannon Wright's best time in practice. So that was an achievement in its own right. And Osrob improved, so he did find a little bit of time there. Goes from a 2:33 to a 2:31.
There's still more time in it. Obviously, he did miss the gear and got sideways out of the hairpin just coming off the bridge. So I'd say there may even be half a second or more if he missed it as bad as what I thought he did. So still quite a bit of time in that. But yeah, we still are waiting on a number of runners who have yet to set a lap time here.
Well, one of them
also just missed that Shannon Wright's actually improved to 2:28.2.
Yeah, he's knocked 0.4 of a second off that time, so that's a very nice marker to lay down. Now that's faster than he went in provisional practice as well. We're now looking over the left shoulder of the newcomer to the series, Luke Rosella. No stranger to you and I, Lewis, in terms of his exploits in Automobilista Australia, iRacing and all things sim racing. It's his first foray into Assetto Corsa Aussie Down Under Series, and he's now on the braking to turn 7. So he's completed sector 1. Just a short shoot up to turn 8. Now this was a man who was, as you said, able to take it up to Shannon Wright in the provisional practice session, was not very far away at all from beating Shannon. In actual fact, did have the top time up until about 5 minutes to go. And you can see there, very nice clip of the inside curb at turn 10, and just riding the curbs as nicely and as gently as he can through here, but he's got a little bit of opposite lock going.
Is the trade of the VL, but I have to say, outside of that, this is the straightest I've ever seen a VL drive. So it's quite weird seeing a VL and it's not pointed sideways coming out of the corners here. So he's doing a really good job, but hopefully the lap time agrees with him here.
Well, we'll soon find out. We know that Nathan Higginson has been akin to getting both the Ford Mustang he started with and the VL Commodore out sideways at most times we see him, but Rosella's keeping it pointing the right direction. We'll stay on board with him for the finish of this lap. He just missed the apex there. He did remark in the pre-practice chat that it is all about how you attack some of these curbs. I mean, some of them you do get pinged for a track violation if you get it wrong. You can see here he's just clipping the inside of most of them pretty comfortably, just running the tyres over those inside curbs without putting the car too far over. A couple of curbs he's missed so far.
Ooh. It's a nice exit out of that chicane, and then this is my favourite two corners on the track, the final two corners, because when you get it right, it feels really good. Albeit that's in a Formula 1 car. To the line he goes, and to the top at 27.9, Rosella. Well,
very nice.
Is quick in everything he tries, the little bugger, and is continuing the trend here at Assetto Corsa.
Well, South Australia's in a bit of a lockdown at the minute. Well, we probably know what he's been doing for the last couple of days, hasn't he? He's been practicing for this.
Well, he does have some exams and stuff coming up for uni, but looks like he's put them aside, and he's put Shannon Wright and the rest of the field aside with absolute scorcher of a lap time, and I believe that's the first 27 we've seen.
Yep, and that's the first wall we've seen this car rub all night long, the number 2 car. Another one of the newcomers today. This is, I believe we've got him in the chat as Lime Mitch. Yes, it is. Believe it or not, Luke Rosella's partner in crime from the AMS Oz Bathurst 500. Those two guys won that event, and I wouldn't say they're teaming up again. They both decided to pick up a VL Commodore and go for a spin tonight. Now, I don't know if this is I think this is a flying lap, actually, because he has registered a previous lap line, Mitch. So this is his first flying lap.
On my screen, it says out lap, but we'll find out, because sometimes it can play up it just a little bit.
Yeah, I did have a 2:32 as a last lap time for this car, but depends if he's gone back to the pits and then started all over again. And I think he's had a moment there, so it looks like he's about to give it away. Indeed, he does. And we now focus in on a pair of BMWs exiting the lane with 7 minutes left. Now, this is par for the course here. These guys are probably going to have to bank on a 2-lap run. If they butcher a lap, then they really haven't got much wiggle room. They just have to press on and go again, because if they ruin these laps, there's not a lot of time left on the clock for them to get it right the second time around. So they really do need to get on it, get their first lap in, and then if they've got time and they're feeling up for it, go for a second one.
Yeah, by the time they cross the start-finish line to start their first flying lap, it's going to be about 4 minutes and 10, maybe 15 seconds if they get a wriggle on. So if they do muck up that first flying lap, hopefully they're fueled up enough to do another lap. But if they damage the car, they have to pretty much press escape straight away and get out immediately.
John Wright just misses running into the Pirelli fencing down at turn 8 as well. So it was offline. He was in the middle of the track, wasn't over to the left-hand side to open up the corner. Got his braking all wrong, and well, that creates a bit of separation between him and Ozrob. So I mean, it's not all bad news. It just means that he's lost a little bit of time on this out lap. Should still have enough time on the clock to get 2 flying laps in though. Over the Anderson Bridge. And now the left turn at turn 13. And then down Raffles Boulevard towards the Sector 2 split. Although this is an out lap, so she won't count for Ozrob.
And Shannon Wright, he's just starting a hot lap as well here. He's got about 3.
Oh, he's wide. Sorry, Lewis, it was very wide there at turn 1. Completely missed the apex at turn 1. Just sort of, I don't know, the car looked like it just ploughed a little bit.
Maybe just outbroke himself by just a small margin. Still able to get it through there. I don't know how stringent the track cuts are, but I haven't seen people using too much of the runoff. And again, almost
so
into
close.
That fence. I reckon he might be the line he takes there lends itself to almost running into the fence, because that wall does sort of break away, and as you said, there is a little bit of an exit ripple strip there that drivers can use, but the lines that Shannon's taking, he's not able to get a little bit further down the road with that. So he's pushing the limits at the moment, and I'd have to say this is probably the biggest challenge he's going to have here. Now, we did have, I'm trying to think, Scott Nolan put up a bit of a fight earlier on in the season at Barbagallo, but Rosella is one also that's going to give him a real run for his money, and Shannon here is going to have to put together a lap that, well, he's going to have to put it all together and then some.
Yeah, spot on. He'll have to find a way to put it all together if he wants pole position. He won't be too stressed about starting on the front row, I think. He might actually probably fancy his chances if he's starting P2 to have a stab into turn 1 on Rosella, depending on how everybody gets away. We have seen a number of drivers struggle to get the VL Commodore off the line quickly, whereas the Volvo seems to be a bit more nimble and able to get off the line just that little bit better. So I think even a front row start he'd be pleased with. He'd like to definitely lower that time, and Rosella's definitely got a big target on his back right now.
Certainly does, but that lap would look as big and as bright as the lights around this around these Singapore streets. Now, I actually had a little bit of timing actually work there, and it looked like Shannon was down by a second at the second split, I believe. But sometimes the timing can be a bit glitchy. Also got Rosella, I believe, on a lap as well.
So 2 more laps for Shannon Wright if he gets across the line cleanly for this one and doesn't make any mistakes. So 3 minutes left in this session. It's a 2.5 minute lap. You do the math. He's got time to get around for 2 more.
2-minute 29.0 on that lap, so still good enough for second place compared to the rest of the field at the moment, but he's got to go forwards, not backwards. Got Rosella also now coming through the final 2 corners.
Yep, he's just going to get time for another lap, and he's going to be right on the cusp here. If he makes a mistake, he will not get another lap. So he's probably the last of the drivers that'll be lucky to get 2 laps. And coming around the final corner now is the number 20,
Brett Willis.
which is Brett Willis, and he's down in 4th place at the moment. And he's this is going to be his last lap. And then behind him, Ozrob is the next man. And is he on a hot lap at the moment? I think actually was. So this will be his last attempt to commence now. And that was a 2:32.1, so that was 3/10 shy of his current best at a 2:31.8. So let's cycle up and pick up Shannon Wright. There he is, coming through turn 9. Very different line. I'm wondering whether he's bailed out of this lap, Lewis. It didn't sort of get all the way out to the exit of turn 10 the way I was expecting him to. What's the timing say for you with the sector splits coming up right now for Sector 2?
Have a look. It had nothing come up at the moment. It's about to come up. And he is 2.5 seconds down according to my timing split. So, yeah, this lap not looking like he's going to improve.
No, definitely doesn't look like he's going to improve.
I've gone back to Luke Rosella to have a look at how he's going. And he's actually up by almost 4 thousandths of a second here.
Oh, right out to the fence too at turn 14. He's going fence to fence, barrier to barrier, and curb to curb right now with millimetre precision. Got the inside curb that time over the little sleepy policeman that time around. Oh, and he has.
Chicane.
He's mucked up and he's bailed out. He's bailed out of it, so he's aborted that. So Rosella is now resigned to sitting in the garage to see what Shannon Wright can muster. Ozrob's in the garage. Dane Licato's in the garage. So Shannon Wright gets another lap. Brett Willis will not. I don't think he will get another lap.
No, he's too far back.
He's not going
to get underneath the grandstand and through the final corners in 15 seconds time. So it's last chance saloon for Shannon Wright and Brett Willis, as well as Jamie Nankervis, John Wright, and a couple of the others out there.
Now, it's not showing on the live timing on the left-hand side there, but it is showing that Lime Mitch has done a lap time good enough for third at the moment, but I think he may have just exited from the service. So Brett Willis's last attempt is a 2:33.6, so that's him done and dusted. Next of the Gold Coast Lawn Bowls Volvos in the hands of Jamie Nankervis. We'll come across actually. In fact, John Wright's ahead of him, and this will be his last flying lap. Oh, there's Lime Mitch. He's in the server. So timing-wise, something's not quite right, but we've got him on our SimHub live timing as a time good enough for third.
2 minute 30.3 according to my screen.
Correct. That puts him in between Shannon Wright and Oz Rob. Now what's John Wright got in store? 2 corners to go. Checkered flag is out for the number 43. And there's an improvement, found 6 seconds. And Nankervis is aborted, so the only man left on a flying lap at the moment is our current championship leader. And they're going to have to be waiting at least another half a minute here at the start-finish line to wave the checkered flag for him.
Yeah, still a couple of corners to go underneath the grandstand, which is unique to just about any other circuit in the world.
The only other thing that really comes close is the building that they go under at Yas Marina. I don't think
the hotel.
Yeah, the hotel. That's the only other sort of racetrack where that happens, with the exception of the figure 8 crossover at Suzuka. And Shannon Wright has aborted.
So Luke Rosella on debut and on pole position. So 2:27.960 is good enough for pole position for Luke Rosella, and he's able to top the championship leader.
Wow. Well, the gauntlet has been thrown down, and the challenge is going to be on tonight. The hard part, well, that was probably the easy part, I think, wasn't it, Lewis? The hard part comes in about 5 minutes' time with the 15 laps that lie ahead of us.
Yeah, 15 laps is a long time when the lap time is, around about 2 minutes 30. So it's going to be a long race. That said, though, Shannon Wright and Rosella, they're separated by absolutely nothing at all. And then like Mitch, he's sort of out on his own there in third. But then after that, it is very close between Osrob, Brett Willis, Dane Liccardo, Jamie Nankervis, and we've seen John Wright go a bit faster as well. So that midfield pack looks like it's going to be pretty close.
Yeah, getting very, very close. So look at the lap times there. So Rosella, the only man to dip under the 228, so the 27.9. Shannon Wright's 228.2 was good enough for second place. Lime Mitch sneaking ahead of Osrob, so a 230.3. We expect Lime Mitch will start P3. And then Osrob P4's 231.8. And he set that very early in the qualifying session and couldn't better it. Brett Willis and Dane Liccardo, surprise, surprise, those two guys are very close together. Brett Willis just edging out Liccardo by 0.2 of a second, so 232.1 plays 232.3. And then the last two men on the grid are Jamie Nankervis, who posted a 233.8, and John Wright, who improved on his last lap with a 242.2. So those are the 8 runners that are in the server. Lowest grid numbers I think we've seen for quite some time, Lewis. I think the lowest numbers since Adelaide, if memory serves me correctly.
Yeah, I wasn't present for Adelaide, but every time I've been present for commentary, it's been double figures, I think, for pretty much every round, except me. Oh, no, even Simmons Plains, I believe, is double figures. So, yeah, smallest turnout for a while, bit of a shame. But we have seen in the past some late runners jump in just after qualifying and the like. So it looks like actually Nathan Higginson's actually just jumped in to add to the field.
So that makes 9, and he's the birthday boy too. We should wish him a happy. I believe he's 18th. Yeah, so he's happy 18th. You're allowed to drink now, mate. So that's the one good thing to turning 18. You can go to the pub legally and you can say, bartender, give me a beer, please.
Yeah, and he got his P's as well during the week. So congratulations on that. Don't drink and drive, of course. Especially don't drink and drive when you're on your P's. If you have just one. So yeah, obviously happy birthday, Higo, and hopefully you can. I know you've probably not done too much or any practice for this round, but hopefully you can give it a crack and stick around and hopefully be in that little midfield pack that I'm sure is going to be close all race long.
Well, let's think about it. Where is Higginson likely to drop his pace? This is something that we haven't seen any practice from him during the week because he was sort of umming and ahhing about whether or not he was going to make it. Now, him and Dane have been sort of pretty reasonably matched over, a 1 or 2 lap run. But when it comes to race trim, Higo tends to get the back out more often than, go forwards. So where does he slot into this? Does he sort of slot in towards the back end of the midfield, I think? There's probably a fair guesstimation as to where he might end up, given these are going to be his first laps, and then we've got the full reverse grid to come for the second race.
Yeah, so I think by the time the reverse grid race comes around, he'll have a fair idea of how to drive the track, or at least a much better idea than what he has now. But I'd say if he can put it all together and not make too many mistakes, he'll probably slot in between Jamie Nankervis and Liccardo pace-wise, but it'll probably take him until the mid-race point to probably get to where they are. So first few laps for him is going to be a bit interesting, but also the circuit being the way it is and being so big, it's actually quite easy to learn if you've driven this track in the past, even if it's in another game. So if he can just be nice, take it nice and easy for the first couple laps, he'll actually build up quite nicely and quite quickly around here because, it's not a busy circuit where you've got to worry about the, one corner immediately after the next one and have to set it up. So he should be okay, but it is going to take him a few laps. But once he gets going, I'd say, yeah, between Liccardo and Nankervis on pace-wise, if you can put it all together.
Yeah, that's where I sort of think you'll be as well. And good to see some of the guys following along in the live chat echoing your sentiments about not drinking and driving. Brian Walsh, I think you've got your spelling around the wrong way because I assume it's a random breath test after the race, but it says radon breast test. So I don't know if he's been to a gentleman's club or not recently, but I don't think he's going to be wanting a breast Walshy after tonight's over. I'm sure he's not a fan of that just yet, being 18.
Well, he's 18, so he can go to these kinds of gentlemen establishments. So
he can. So we'll see what happens after all this is over. Maybe he's just left after seeing that comment now. But no, it looks like he might just be on the back of the grid, I think. Yes, he is. So we've just got him as the last car on the grid. Of course, the stupid part for this is if we have a look, one of the unique things about Assetto Corsa is the positioning of the safety car. So the broadcaster is assigned the safety car, and you can see there it is at the back. It was last on the grid, and of course the other broadcaster car is yours, Lewis. They're on the right-hand side of the screen. Then Higginson's going to have to go round this car. So this is the hard part for him. He'll have to sort of dive to the either the left or the right, because we're not going to be able to get this car out of the way in time.
Well, if you don't click on the race button, obviously that car disappears off the race start. So mine, because I wait until after the race is underway, and once they get through turn 1, so my car will be there on the grid, but once it goes, the lights are on and they're away, it actually disappears back to the pits. But yeah, here you go with yours. Is you got to go immediately left to avoid running into the back of the Vodafone Ford Mustang, but I don't think he'll mind too much, because he'll just want to take it nice and easy on this first lap.
Yep, I think so. He'll just baby it away from the line and look after the tyres. The tyres will be a big talking point in this. We'll pick that up a bit later. The lights are about to go into sequence for the first of 15 laps tonight. Rosella off of pole, followed by Shannon Wright. Who gets the jump? Well, Lime Mitch.
Got a good start. So's Lime Mitch.
Yeah, Lime Mitch had a fantastic jump. We were following him and behind, and he's going to try and go around the outside of Luke Rosella into turn 1. VL Commodores 1 and 2. Dosrob's had a fantastic start. Dane Liccardo's had a pretty decent one as well. So most of the VLs have been able to walk their way off the line pretty well.
Yeah, contact between Wright and Liccardo as well through turn 3, but yeah, the VLs have stormed up front, and it's going to be a bit awkward for the BMW and the Volvo here, because this is the longest run now coming out of, I think it's turn 5 or 6 here, so not the ideal start for Shannon Wright. Good start though for Osrob, perfect start from Lime Mitch.
Now Liccardo's managed to get himself back ahead of Shannon Wright, or the Volvo that got into the side of him, so Lime Mitch, wowee, what a good start he had from the second row of the grid.
He's wide.
Yep, very wide, and he coughs up. Yeah, he's gone off the end of turn 7. And Liccardo's had a look at the inside. Osrob is contacted turn 8. And then there's all sorts of it going on as well. Oh, and that's an unsafe rejoin as well. There's all sorts of chaos going on down at turn 8.
Yeah, so that was Nan Curvis. It's a pretty big loser in that one, but yeah, Osrob not going to be too pleased with that one, and he's going to have to work his way forward after what was a fantastic start from him. But Rosella, he's had one of the biggest free kicks he's ever had, because he's now 3 seconds ahead of Liccardo and Lime Mitch in 3rd place, so it's actually a VL 1, 2, 3 at the moment.
Oh, and Lime Mitch has had
he's redressing, I think. He's redressing a position.
Yeah, either that or he had a bit of a slide job off of turn 13. I didn't quite catch what it was, but the car all of a sudden very quickly veered to the left after some more to the left after the left-hander, and he's given up a couple of spots there. Now, the only other question mark is going to be around Dane Liccardo as well. Now, obviously try to move on Osrob, lock the brakes going into 8, got into him, so there might very well be a little bit of a look at that after the race is over, and I don't know what he's going to be feeling in that cockpit. He's probably going to be kicking himself that he's made a little mistake there, and may very well have a points penalty to pay. We're not going to speculate too much, but he might very well have a case to answer.
Yeah, so he's not going to be too happy, but he's now got to get his head down and just try and forget about it and just maximise the result he can get. Actually, looking at the screen, it says final lap for me, so I don't know what's going on. But that last sector, though, Rosella's put 2.5 seconds on, or just abouts on Dane Liccardo. So Rosella at the moment is smoking the field. Shannon Wright's actually got Brett Willis for company, and Lime Mitch has got back going again. So interesting battle here for 3rd place here.
Well, Brett Willis was running in 3rd, and down the main straight, Shannon Wright rounded him up with ease. So I think that might actually be the teammates saying just go through.
Look out for him at the back end of the straight. He's going to have the top speed advantage, but can he pull it up? He obviously had the fantastic start, but then Obviously, he forgot to brake here into this braking zone. He's deep. Can he get it in? A little bit of a
Oh, a little bit of a lock-up. And
Oddrop's going to capitalise here. He might get both of them.
well, that one might be a bit of a half, 6 to 1, half dozen to the other into there. Line Mitch is fairly and squarely up the inside. Was a little bit later on the brakes to try and hold position. I think maybe tried to hold Shannon Wright wide just a little bit there. And there was a bit of contact. So I'm not sure how the officials will see that one. But what it has done is set Shannon Wright's gone on ahead. Sorry, that wasn't Shannon Wright. Sorry, that was Brett Willis. Sorry, apologies to Shannon Wright. That was Brett Willis that there was the contact with Lime Mitch.
Yeah, I just had a look on, because I got the stream up going at the same time, and from the second viewing of that, I think Lime Mitch probably had right of way, because he was clearly alongside. It's just that Willis has just gone to turn in when there's been a car there, so he just needed just to open up the steering and maybe try and set up a switchback. But unfortunate, but they'll both be able to keep going, thankfully.
Big margin out in front though. This margin is growing by, not by as much by the sector, by about every 100 metres. Rosella seems to find a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. 7.5 the deficit to Liccardo, 8.8, 8.9 now rather, to Shannon Wright. So the next target for Shannon Wright is to get back ahead of Dane Liccardo, and he's now going to start to apply the blowtorch to the rear end of this number 35. And Liccardo's just starting to narrow up his lines into a couple of these corners. You saw him just narrow it up a little bit there on the entrance to the final chicane, which was turns 20 and 21.
2:27.9.
Wow.
Already, and we've got Shannon Wright in the pits. So
early stop.
He's getting his compulsory pit stop out of the way. Doesn't want to lose time behind Dane Liccardo here, and he's electing to come into the pit. So probably a smart move just to get himself into some clear air. But his tyres at the back end of the race aren't probably going to be too happy with him, I'd say.
No, and I would imagine what may have happened is Shannon may have started on the softer compound tyre, maybe going to switch to the medium. Tyre's a big talking point. You know, some drivers were saying the softs were good maybe for just a one-lap dash. If you were lucky and you drove the car a bit straighter, you might be able to get 2 laps out of them. But the medium tyre, I think, seemed to be the tyre of choice for the race. But we'll have to keep an eye when Shannon goes on to.
I think it's car dependent. I know the VLs, it's pretty. You cannot run the soft tyre. You could maybe run it for half a lap, and then your rears are overheating, regardless of how you drive it. So that car's always going to be, on the mediums for the most part, unless you're a bit crazy or you're just having a dip in qualifying. As we see Ozdrop here up the inside of Lime Mitch, who's going to get a bit sideways and holds on around the outside quite nicely there, but. Yeah, I would expect that Shannon probably going to stay on the soft tyre because it's a tyre that works for the Volvo. So I'll just have a look and see what tyre he is on, and he is indeed still on the soft tyre according to the sort of course of timing, with all the VL runners all on mediums.
Yeah, I think Luke Rosella did set his time on a medium tyre in qualifying as well. So owing to your theory there that he's on. The VL has to run that sort of tyre. Also just cut back to have a look at Shannon Wright to his pit lane exit. I noticed there's a couple of guys that have been taking some liberties with the pit lane exit and cutting across the blend line. I'm not sure how that's going to be seen. A few drivers have done it. Shannon didn't have any other traffic around him at the time, but just cut the last part of that pit lane exit, which we know in Formula One terms is a big no-no. Stewards frown very much upon that. There's also apparently a rumour doing the rounds. I'm not sure where this has come from. Roadies Racing in a live chat is actually saying, can we confirm the rumour the water barriers at this circuit are filled with wine? Now, I didn't think there were any water barriers here at this circuit. I thought they were all tyre barriers. Lewis?
Now, I can confirm, because obviously Michael Mazzi now running the Formula 1 show, and I'm guessing that this is going to be a precursor to the Grand Prix. And I can confirm there is wine inside they've got, it looks like tyres, but they've actually got sealed tops and bottoms, and they're actually a barrel, so it's barrels of wine instead of actual tyre bundles here.
Well, wonder what they've got on board, whether it's I guess they call it the sacramental wine of motor racing. Don't want to get...
in the pits here,
Yeah,
Willis and
Higginson. Yeah, so now they're sort of pitting, I think, line astern. We can't really see beyond the barriers there, so that's not going to do us any good. We'll go back to the on-track action, but those guys sort of came in line astern, and now they're leaving the pits. in the next few minutes or so. That promotes John Wright up the order. It also means Shannon Wright will go through. Looking at Shannon Wright's lap time that last time out, that included his out lap was a 3:03. So there's at least 30 to 35 seconds or so in a pit stop, getting onto pit road and taking your service, then getting back out. Pit lane was actually the very first thing at this circuit to change after the initial 2008 Singapore Grand Prix. Back in the day, they actually had it come in off the final corner, literally at the very final corner. It immediately peeled in, and then it fed directly back into the racetrack before turn 1. And obviously there's a few safety concerns after that, so now the pit lane comes in at turn 22. There's a separate runoff for that, and then it feeds all the way back into the outside of turn 2, and that's the way it's remained ever since 2009.
It's a very awkward pit entry and exit since the remodelling of the pits. The entry, it's very easy to come into because you don't want to lose time on your in lap, and it's very easy if you get it wrong to go straight back onto the racetrack after bouncing over the curbs. And then of course, you're taking a much tighter line through the inside of turn 1. So you do lose a bit of time there. It's just having a look at the moment. Shannon Wright's actually not losing too much time to Rosella at the moment. He sort of kept that gap at around about 49 seconds, and comparing that to Liccardo and Lion Mitch, he's actually probably gained 2, 3, maybe even 4 seconds already, while he's sort of maintained that gap to Rosella. So coming in early, looks like he's going to net him, unless he makes a mistake. And move back up to second place once all the pit stops shake out.
Speaking of pit stops, there is that pit lane entrance that you were talking about. Very awkward pit lane because it's not separated by very much. We're just looking at over Osrob's right shoulder, and it's very easy to overshoot that pit lane entry given that there's no real barriers. Oh, big slide from Osrob. Manages to hold on to it at turn 1. He was having a pretty good view of the Liccardo and Lime Mitch battle, but he's just, he's dropped it now, and he's dropped it on the exit of turn 3, and is facing the wrong direction, and here comes Dan Curvis.
And, well, that's where, thankfully it was a Grand Prix circuit, because if it was any other kind of circuit, I think we probably would have seen an incident, but thankfully it's nice and wide, and Shannon Wright setting his personal best at 2:29.2. Unfortunately for him, he's still actually 2 seconds, or sorry, 2/10 of a second slower than Rosella.
And Osrob's had another moment a bit further back at turn 6 now, turn 5 as well, so he's not having a good start to this lap. We've overheated those rear tyres, and they're probably crying poor now. I think he's probably going to be due in for a stop very shortly.
Yeah, he is on the soft tyre as well, and I did do 2 laps, 1 time lap I was able to finish in the BMW, and I did try the soft, and you can overheat it, and after that spin that he had there, the exit of turn 3, that rear left and rear right's certainly going to be crying out, and again, big slide for Osrob, and around he goes.
Well, that's 3 times this lap. That's now between turns 7 and 8. So he's going to have a real battle on his hands to get back to the pits now. We're going to go back to the battle for second and third place, because Lime Mitch was all over the back of Dane Liccardo coming into the Singapore Sling turn number 10. And he's just lost a little bit of distance to the rear end of that car now, so all that hard work, he's going to have to do it all over again.
These guys have lost about 3 to 4 seconds just in the last lap, so I wonder if these guys have made contact at some point, or if they've just been overly defensive, because that gap between Rosella and themselves is only about 17, 18 seconds, and now it's 20, 21, so they're going to be well behind Shannon Wright if they pit now. So they've lost a good, 7, 6 seconds here.
Yeah, the only benefit that they're going to have is the benefit of fresher tyres come the end of the race. But of course, they're going to have to go onto the mediums and make the remaining laps work, as we're only 1/3 distance through this race now. Look at the exit line Mitch gets off of turn 21 out of that last chicane, but he just can't do anything with it. Oh, he picked up the inside curb as well at the second last corner and very nearly dropped it at turn 23. He just seems to have a little bit of an edge over Liccardo in some parts of the track, and in some other parts he just doesn't get off the corner cleanly, or makes a bit of a mistake and then loses it all and has to gather it all back up again. But he is wringing the neck of this number 2 for all that it's worth in a minute, trying to force Liccardo into a mistake.
Yeah, He's certainly having a dip, but I do think he's probably just overdriving a little bit. He's very, very close to the back of Liccardo here. The problem with Lion Mitch and Liccardo is they're both VL, so top speed for these guys is going to be pretty much the exact same. And it's going to make it difficult for Lion Mitch to get by unless he can force Liccardo into a mistake. He's shown the nose here, but again, he's not close enough to make a move. And he's just going to try and force Liccardo to run a little bit wide and try and set up a move in the corner later. But again, not quite close enough. And he's compromised himself there. He's actually going to drop just a little bit of time as you see Ozrob in the pits there on the hard.
Well, finally, Ozrob manages to get himself back to pit lane to get a new set of boots. Lion Mitch is forcing a couple of mistakes from Liccardo here. You can see down at turn 7 rather, that he missed the apex by a country mile from the preferred racing line, and Lion Mitch from the bit closer to that corner was able to make it. So there are a couple of mistakes just starting to creep in, but Mitch is just not there to capitalise on it right now. This is the corner where he had problems last time. The acceleration off this corner and down Raffles Boulevard. Now that's a little bit better.
Still not close enough, but that's more of what he's got to do. But it's got to say though, Liccardo's doing all the things that you need to do. He's in the same car as Lion Mitch, and all he's got to do is just nail the exits, especially coming across that, I think it's a bridge. But if you can get, that is one of the big passing points on the circuit, Liccardo nailing the exit there, and he's able to live to fight another day. If he doesn't mistake elsewhere on the circuit, he should hold on to second. But that will turn to third place once the pit stops shake out, because yeah, these guys just holding each other up at the moment, and they need to find themselves in 2-minute 30s or 29s. But with these guys going defensive and going aggressive, it's costing them quite a bit of time here.
If I was Lion Mitch, I'd be in this lap. I'd be in this lap and get it over and done with if he wants to jump Liccardo. But no, he decides to. They both decide to press on.
Liccardo's missed the apex at the penultimate corner, but it sort of blocked Lion Mitch a little bit. But he is close enough here for the move, and he's going to have a go here into turn 1.
He thought about it, backed out of it a bit more. Liccardo's gone deep,
He's
little bit.
Brake.
Oh, and he wasn't there to capitalise.
Now he's going to try and set up the exit.
Yep, trying to get him on the switchback, but now that's not the problem. You need to get on their tail and you need to send it up the inside into turn 5, and he needs to be close enough to do that. Is he close enough to do that? Yes, he is.
A little bit of lag there.
And he's out.
He's going to break himself.
And then gives the place straight back.
Yeah, so a little bit odd there. On my screen, Liccardo just sort of glitched behind him there, but he's actually done the smart thing. He just undercut him coming out of the corner. And, well, battle resumed.
Yep. Round number, I've lost count, and they'll continue to go on. Our race, big slide. Our race leader is over the Anderson Bridge, and he's in a class of his own right now, just plodding along, banging out the lap times. Last lap around was a 2:29.5, so the only man that is really consistently banging out those lap times. Shannon Wright's last lap was a 10th quicker at a 2:29.4, but of course he is some what's it there off the pace, 48.5 seconds behind the race leader. So Rosella should come out after a pit stop and comfortably resume the race lead.
He should be in the race lead once he does pit. Shannon Wright's actually made up a little bit of time in Rosella, so I don't know if Rosella's backed off or made a mistake or even had traffic, but that gap's actually, it did at one point get under 49 seconds, but it looks like it's just crept out up just a little bit at the moment. But I don't think he's stressing all that much, is Rosella. He knows he's got quite a comfortable lead over everybody, even with pit stops to take into consideration. So he's probably just taking it easy because he doesn't have to overdrive the car. And damage it as Liccardo's outbroke himself just before the little stadium section, and Lion Mitch gets the easiest position of his Assetto Corsa career so far.
Yeah, gone down the runoff escape road at turn 18 just before they go under the grandstand, and that coughs up P2 to Lion Mitch. So the pressure that Lion Mitch was applying has worked. And Lion Mitch actually comes into the pits, so this is going to be a net gain for Lion Mitch. He'll come out on fresher rubber. Liccardo probably should have been awake to that and should have gone in behind him, try and stay on the same strategy, because he's not going to get a benefit from staying it any longer. Nankervis now realises that the the opportunity is there now to get in. Maybe he can possibly jump Dane Liccardo in all of this as well.
Yeah, and so Shannon Wright's actually just gone past the pits and is at turn 1 while Lion Mitch is still stationary. So, yeah, all that battling cost them a chunk of time. And if they really wanted to try and take it up to Shannon Wright, they probably should have just pitted the lap after Shannon pitted and hoped that Shannon's in-lap and out-lap weren't all that flash. But, yeah, they're going to be battling for third place. Liccardo's still in with a shout, but he's going to have to put together almost a perfect second half of this race, and he's going to have to get the pit stop strategy right here.
Now, Brett Willis has come out ahead of Jamie Nankervis as well. So Brett Willis, I believe, has already stopped and has plodded along quite nicely and has made a net gain as well. So up to P5.
And they're about 12 seconds away from Lion Mitch after his pit stop. So if something does happen with Lion Mitch and Liccardo especially after that escape down the
runoff road.
Down the runoff road there, he might actually end up behind Brett Willis here. So that's going to be something to look out for when Liccardo does enter the pits.
Hard to believe we're only at the halfway point of this race as well. We've been going for 19 and a half minutes and we're on lap 8, which is just about halfway through for the race leader, is it anyway? So tracking towards a 40-minute race as it stands right now with the lap times have been done and our race leader is coming in.
Yep, so he doesn't really have to attack too hard on the pit entry here. He's got quite a handy cushion. And he's taking it nice and easy on his way into the pit. 36 seconds, 37 seconds in front of Liccardo, who is yet to pit. About 50 seconds in front of Shannon Wright, who is his main competitor in this one.
Here he is in for his stop. Oh, we've got a bit of a weird-looking camera there from the chest cam of Dane Liccardo, and he's in as well.
Yeah, so he's actually only 12 seconds in front of Shannon Wright after all this, and it's hard to believe that Shannon Wright pitted. When he pitted, he was right behind Liccardo, so that is a lot of time lost. But Liccardo's still in his young sim racing career. We'll find out sooner or later, or he'll figure out strategy and consistency further down the road, but yeah, probably should have pitted a little bit earlier and just maybe got out of that battle he had with Lion Mitch there. Lion Mitch coming out through the final corner, and he's going to be comfortably ahead of Liccardo. Where is Brett Willis though? He's probably going to get him as well, and Nankervis may actually get him as well, because Liccardo...
He's just on the move now, just starting to move now. This is going to be really tight.
Yeah, so Willis will get him. Will Nankervis?
Here comes Liccardo down the pit lane road, and Willis will get him. It's going to be touch and go between Nankervis and Liccardo, and Jamie just sneaks ahead, and that's a really important gain for Jamie.
It certainly is, but he's got to worry now because we do know the VL got more top speed than the Volvo, and Liccardo's not too far away, so there's going to be a battle here between these two Volvos and Dane Liccardo in the final 6 laps of this one.
Now, Nankervis had only stopped the lap prior to Liccardo as well, so he was on an out lap and he was still getting those tyres and up to temp and up to pressure, so that was an extremely important lap to make sure it counted. His out lap was a 3:07. I think we saw Shannon Wright do a 3:03 on his out lap.
And that's what he did on lap 1 and made contact with Ozrob there. And he's having another look here. He probably just needs to buy his time and wait for the straight, because he's going to have the advantage. Just putting it in at the tighter corners where the Volvo can just brake a little bit later. It's just going to make things awkward for him. So hopefully he just waits until after this sharp left-hand hairpin, and he should have the top speed advantage and be able to get by the Volvo quite easily if he can just get the exit right this next left-hander here.
Yeah, you just got to play it smart here. Oh, sneaks up the inside. That's a very, very nice move, actually. Got it cleanly alongside for turn 13. And he should have the drag. Yeah, the drag race. But he's on the wrong side for the next corner at turn 14. So now Nankervis will have to return the favour and leave him a little bit of space on the outside. Although the switchback...
He's done a great move and again, it will be a little bit of a drag to the next part of the circuit, but smart driving from Liccardo, and is up a position. So good driving from both those guys, left each other space, race hard, and in the end, Liccardo's got the position, but now he's got to go through the part of the circuit where the Volvo is king, and the VL does seem to struggle a little bit.
And you can see there that Jamie's trying to weave around, trying to distract Dane into this because he knows that this is the section of the circuit where the Volvo has a much, much better advantage in cornering than the VL does. But Dane's parking it in all the right spots at the moment. Drove it very defensively into the turn 16 and 17 chicane just to consolidate that move that he'd made. But great situational awareness just to sneak it up the inside at turn 13, and then he thought about the move. He realised he was going to be on the wrong side and had to go the wrong way, and then just pulled anchors a little bit earlier and was able to create room for the undercut, but not that time. And now he needs to give Jamie the space again.
Yeah, so if he plays a little bit...
Oh, there's some... there's contact on the exit there as well.
It's, we'll probably get in the naughty books for that one. Should have just waited, because he's got this massive long stretch here. But all he's got to do is just stay behind the Volvo, and he'll get the position. But I think he's in too much of a hurry to get after Brett Willis just down the road. Yeah,
I think so too, Lewis. We've called this a few times in previous series about get there-itis, and he's got a huge pace advantage with that Commodore down the straight, so he didn't really need to do anything. I could see what he was trying to attempt there. He'd left Jamie the space after making the mistake, which was all fair, but then he's tried to go for the switch back over and under again, which is not what you want to be doing for that corner, because the next one at turn 5 you would have had to do the exact thing that he did at turn 14 and try and get back underneath him, and he just didn't judge it properly. And just a little bit of a tag in the rear, and that was just enough for the lighter Volvo to be sent around by the heavier VL.
Yeah, nothing malice in it. It's just one of those things where sometimes you don't quite have the spatial awareness of the car you're driving just yet. You don't, you know sort of where the nose is, but in this case, he's gone for it, and his nose is a little bit closer to the Volvo than what he thought, and ended up spinning him around there. So we can both see what he's doing. He just didn't get the execution right, but Nankervis not going to be too pleased with that one, especially because Dane probably should have waited and just redressed the position there.
Yeah, agree. That's something we've been trying to instill into a number of drivers in Automobilista Australia, is the art of redressing. It's got to be done as quickly as possible, but as safely as possible as well. I mean, there was plenty of room there for them to do it. They had plenty of margin behind them to Ozrob, somewhat 20 seconds or so you can see there on live timing. So could have given it, and I think now Jamie's probably a little bit frustrated because he's just making a few mistakes in his haste to try and catch back up to Dane. And he's just made a bit of a meal of that turn 16-17 chicane there before he comes underneath the grandstand.
Yeah, but it's not all terrible for Nankervis, though. I mean, if he does finish where he is, he'll start in front of Liccardo for the reverse grid race. So if you can just keep it clean here, he'll still be able to pick up some solid points for P6 and have himself a decent starting position for the second race. But you don't want to... Well, it'll make it better for him starting position-wise for the next race, but you do want to pick up the maximum amount of points as possible. So hopefully he doesn't make a... he turns into... gets into the mode where you just overdrive it, you're a bit grumpy, and you sort of spiral a little bit, where you just keep constantly making worse and worse mistakes.
Well, aside from making a handful of those mistakes and the early contact down here, this part of the circuit on lap 1, most of the racing has been pretty clean for the kind of street circuit that this is. I mean, we do see a bit of carnage here sometimes in real life racing, but it hasn't been too bad tonight. Lomich, pretty good solid third position on debut there, goes through turn 10. We've already alluded to the fact that that particular corner has changed over the years, last being used in 2012. And then was changed for 2013, and then the preceding corners after it with the chicane, turns 11 and 12 as they go over the Anderson Bridge, was realigned in 2015, and that was the last change that this circuit has had made to it. All in all, it's hard to believe when the circuit was first introduced, 5.067 kilometres long. Then with the couple of changes that were made, it went out to 5.073. And now it's been back to 5.065. So all of those changes from when it originally started, it's pretty much back to its original length.
It certainly is, as you see. I think Rosella go in fast through 27.8. So he's just taking it easy, and then it's like, nah.
I'm getting bored out here.
Getting bored out here. Let's just go out there, set a heater, and let everyone know that, yeah, I'm faster than you in this race. So he's taking it easy, and he put Shannon Wright 3 seconds on him, or just about 3 seconds on that last lap. Who said it's 2:30, so it's flying along out there. But yeah, it's gone through a number of changes. I'm trying to remember all the different variations of some of the corners. The pit lane is all I remember, the current one. I don't really remember the 2008 version all that much. But Singapore Sling, obviously, that's gone through a number of changes. There was a point, can't remember, might have been the 2012 version of the circuit where it was just a straight left, and it was actually quite quick. Didn't have the curbs on the other side. That wasn't too bad, but they've made it a little bit sharper now, and then there's a even tighter chicane before you go over the bridge a little bit just after that. I'm not too much of a fan of the current layout. I like some of the ones from the 2000 and sort of 10 through to 12 and 13 era, but yeah, it's certainly, I'm not a big fan of street tracks, but this one isn't too bad, although these cars around here, maybe not the most suited, but they haven't been too bad around here, and thankfully, because it's so big, we haven't seen too many massive accidents, as Rhodey is looking for in the races.
No, you're spot on. He is expecting a bit more death, as he likes to call it, but no, it's been pretty clean. I mean, the biggest incident, of course, that happened here in real life was the Renault Crashgate scandal. Not too long after the circuit first hosted a couple of Grand Prix, and of course we all know what happened back on that particular day.
Well, that was the first Grand Prix, so 2008.
That's right, it was too. For some reason I was thinking it was the year after, but no, you're absolutely right. It was 2008, and the Nelson Piquet crash that handed Fernando Alonso the maiden victory for the circuit.
And obviously, Fernando had to drive fast enough to win the race, but they certainly did alter the outcome of that race, because Felipe Massa, what people don't forget or remember is that he was leading that race quite comfortably, and I think Kimi Räikkönen was, if he wasn't second, he was certainly third, quite close to Hamilton when the safety car came out. I don't know if it was the Crashgate incident or if it was for another one, and of course Felipe Massa went off, and they had a glitch with the pit stop, because they had all the pit crew would have buttons to indicate when they're all good to go, and they've done their duty, and a green light would appear when they're all done, and it appeared, and the fuel rig wasn't done, and he ripped the fuel hose out, ruined Kimi Räikkönen's race behind him, ruined his own race, and if he hadn't have done that, he would have been in front of Hamilton, probably won the championship that year.
Well, speaking of being in front of somebody, Liccardo's just been gifted fourth place by Brett Willis, who ran down the escape road at turn number 18, the same spot that we saw, I believe it was Lime Mitch go down that escape road a little bit earlier on, and cough up a position as well. So, strikes again. So that battle was just starting to close in quite nicely. Liccardo was just starting to gain a little bit of time every couple of laps, and that's all just sort of amounted to nothing now. Brett Willis finds himself P5.
Yeah, so closest battle on tracks now between Willis and Curvis, as Willis runs a little bit wide at turn 1, because we've got Rosella 18 seconds out in front, and then we've got Shannon Wright about 16 seconds ahead of Lime Mitch, and Lime Mitch is almost half a minute in front of Liccardo. So some big gaps at the moment, but I'm sure like all these guys in the midfield, like they'll all have some tales and some stories of this one, where after a race you'll talk to someone and they'll be swearing up and down that I should have finished in this position in this race, and I'm pretty sure all of them outside of Rosella and Shannon Wright would probably be thinking, yeah, I should have finished in third position, or I should have finished higher up.
Yeah, there'll be a few tales of woe and a few tales of what should have been by the time that this first race is over. And Shannon Wright's now just coming around to pass Nathan Higginson, who's already gone a lap down to race leader. Does the right thing, gets out of the way there. And the birthday boy has had a bit of a tough time, but he's managed to get his lap time down to a 2:43.8 just by circulating. I looked at about 10 minutes or so ago, his best lap was a 2:53, I think. So he's found a bit of time. Still not the quickest man out there on the circuit, but as it stands right now, he's been given a slowdown there as well because he's not taken that last chicane all that cleanly. But as it stands right now, he is going to have the reverse grid pole in about 10 or so minutes.
It's actually not too far away from John Wright. So John Wright's going through turn 3 at the moment. Higginson coming into turn 1. So mistake here and there. And I could see Higo maybe close up to the back of John Wright, but that slowdown certainly didn't help his chances. I think Higginson here is just, he didn't know if he was going to make it for tonight's race. I think he just, at the moment, he's just out there just to pick up some championship points so he can not lose too many to Liccardo, who is currently running in 4th place.
And as you can see there, just bagging it up and having a bit of fun, although he got very close to the wall on the opposite side of the circuit by doing it. He's only got
doing the old Nathan Higginson, just getting it right out sideways.
Yeah, about to say, we've got to think about what we call it now. Is it called doing a Higo? Is getting the car sideways now. I think that'll be the coined frame, claim to fame that I think a lot of people decide to go with it. We always talk about some drivers in our other series that we do broadcast commentary for with Automobilista Australia. People like Brenton Foley liking to get the back end out quite often. And I think Higginson is
another one.
Yeah, Brendan Ross, another one, who's not here tonight. And I think he'll be looking to take that moniker away. But I don't think he's quite there yet.
Well, I have to say, though, what Higginson does, and he's a little bit more exuberant than either Foley or Rossi. Those two obviously go a little bit quicker, but Higo gets it a lot more sideways. So he could say, yeah, I drifted a little bit better than you guys, I think. But they can go and say, well, we're a second or two a lap faster.
I'm being picked up by my my mincing of words again. Thank you, Rhodey. The coined claim to fame, I think it is meant to be, but now it's called the coined frame. So where all the funny words are coming out again. What's not funny is how much dominance the race leader has had. Oh, is he slowing down here? What's going on? Did he just get a
track cut, maybe?
Maybe, yeah. Maybe he's just had an accidental shortcut. So he's out. He's in the pits. Has he had a disconnect?
He's gone back to the pits. Maybe he thought it was the last lap.
I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure what's going on there. But wow,
he thinks it's the last lap or something. That's odd.
Very odd. Pits are now closed. Final lap has commenced. Shane Wright's gone to the lead. So this is most unusual. John Wright going off in the background. Luke Rosella, yeah, he's stationary in the pit lane.
Yeah, or maybe he's had some PC dramas. We know in AMSLs he's had some issues in the past with, the game freezing and stuff like that, and he's turned replays off, and that seemed to have fixed it. But here, I don't know what's going on here. Just one of those weird things, because he had this race in the bag. I have seen people stop a lap too early before. Nigel Mansell's famous for stopping a corner too early and stalling the car, but Rosella here, don't know what's happened, and looks like he's not going to leave the pits here, Steve.
Well, I was about to say, with all what wasn't funny was the dominant display that he had put on for this whole entire race, and then now all of a sudden he is not going to finish on the lead lap of this race. He's done enough to be classified, but not quite 100% sure what's happened there for Luke Rosella. Every single lap outside of the pit stops that I had seen, he was under the 2-minute 30 barrier. He was dominating this race, and everybody now moves up the order, and that will now gift the race win on a platter to the current championship leader.
Maybe he wants to start from the front in the reverse grid race. I don't know.
He won't be able to, though. The problem is he's going to start third, because if he gets back into the game, he's a lap down. He's the last car on the lead lap, so the lap down cars can't get back ahead. And he's just popped into the live chat now just to say this game is fantastic. So I'm wondering if he has had some sort of a drama.
It'd have have to be some kind of drama. He can if he can get his game running again, or if he can close the game and start it back up, he can get back into the server and finish the race. But it's just complaining about the track cut system. So I think he's got one or two slowdowns, or maybe he's even been DQ'd or something because he's got too many track cuts or something. I don't know, but
No, well, the DQ normally kicks in after the race is over. If you don't come in and serve your penalty for that, then you end up. It just disqualifies you on the spot, I think, because it's not showing as DQ here. But chalk another win up, albeit out of the blue, I guess we could call it, for Shannon Wright. He's pretty happy with that. And I guess he'll call himself very fortunate to be handed that win.
Doesn't matter, you still claim a win, regardless of how it happens.
And of course, because of Luke Rosella's retirement, he ends up with the fastest lap as well, according to our live timing. But we'll have to just check to see what the situation is from patron saint of ACADS in John Wright. I believe that Luke Rosella will be classified for that one because he completed the number of laps, so we'll have to confirm that. So Lime Mitch home in second. Now Liccardo's going to get home for third, but of course there's a big question mark over his head after a couple of incidents in that particular race.
Willis and Curvis quite close together as they come through the final couple corners. So only 2.5, 3 seconds separating the two Volvos. They're going to come home in fourth and fifth, about 14 seconds ahead of Osrob in the BMW.
Yeah, so Brett Willis managing to hang on for fourth. Now that's his best result of the season as well, Brett Willis, so good job. And Jamie Nankervis racks up another fifth place, and looking through the order, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those for him on the season so far out of the 16 races contested. And then all the other drivers that are getting home. Osrob's home for P6. John Wright, we're going to class John Wright according to this as obviously P7, and Nathan Higginson as position 8 because of Luke Rosella's non-finish. But he is back in the game. So I believe at this point, given he's got back in, he's probably going to be classified as 9th, so he'll get points for a 9th place finish.
Well, if that means he'll start from pole if he does make race through. So.
Well, he is now that he's back in the race. So those guys that were a lap down to the race leader have obviously moved ahead of Rosella because he went into a did not finish state and then now has come back in. So, yeah, potentially this means he's going to be on the reverse grid pole, but we'll have to wait until we get to the start of that race before we know if it is going to be a reverse grid pole or not.
Yeah, so that's something we'll have to find out. But had some good racing that one, Steve. It did sort of go a bit quiet towards the back end of the race, but the first half did have some good battling, and in the middle we did see some good battling as well, although we did have a couple unfortunate incidents involved in that. But for the most part, not too bad a race. Hopefully race 2 is a bit better.
Yeah, hopefully race 2 is going to be, I guess, a little bit more entertaining from our point of view. We did have the opening two or three laps, I think, where most of the action was in that particular encounter. And if the reverse grid race is anything to go by some of the races we've seen so far this year, there might be a few interesting twists in the tail. I mean, we saw a Queensland Raceway. I believe there was a couple of incidents early on in the reverse grid race. For the most part, the reverse grid races have been pretty clean, though. So I'm happy to be proven wrong.
Yeah, so had I. So hopefully, we do see some crackerjack racing out there. Obviously, we're going to have Shannon Wright, Lime Mitch. Well, Lime Mitch we've seen in other series start from the back of the field and end up, pretty much, maybe not in the lead, but certainly very, very close to it after the end of the first lap. And that was in bigger fields. So we saw the start he got at the start of this race. If he didn't bowl it off at the front there, he would have probably given Rosella a bit of a headache early on in the race. So he's going to be one to look out for off the start here. If he can match that start, he could go from, almost last to first by turn 1 if he can just match that again.
Problem is he's got a very short run to turn 1, I guess, as well. So we'll have to see how he goes. I would imagine if he does get one of those ripper starts again, that he might be, up to about the midway point through the pack by the time we get to turn 1. But then it starts to become a little bit tricky, having to negotiate those first couple of corners and then, find your rhythm again. And we're just having a bit of a lull while we wait for the server to roll over and everybody to jump back in. And just I think a few drivers might have just jumped out, restarted their machines, and jumped back in. There is a couple of, I think, drivers. Looks like they're discussing some of the contact incidents in that first race. So, yeah, I think a few guys maybe a bit hot under the collar might have to just curtail the blow-ups for a little bit and then wait until the night's over and then let off some steam, I think.
Yeah, not a bad idea between races. Just cool off, forget about it, or do what you can to forget about it, and then get yourself going and concentrated, focused for race number 2.
Well, countdown timer is on. We've got a bit of a 5-minute wait until the grid starts to form up. And if anything is to go by, we expect the reverse grid pole position man to be Luke Rosella, but we'll just wait for official confirmation that that's what's happening. What it has done in the standings, though, now, of course, Dane left the little bit of a question mark over his head for a couple of the incidents there. At the moment, he is ahead of Terry Marwood in position number 3 in the championship standings by virtue of Terry not being here tonight, but we'll just wait to see how all that pans out. Jamie Nankervis has moved to within, actually he's not that far away. He is only 28 points behind Terry now for that 5th place finish in that race as well. So he could very well also be ahead of Terry by the end of tonight. And then a few extra points for John Wright moves him a little bit closer and also a bit further away from Termo at the same time. And just looking down the order to see if anybody else has vaulted up the order. Brett Willis has actually vaulted himself inside the top 10 now. So that's a pretty handy result for him. He's just moved 2 points ahead of Brian Munn for his 4th place finish. So that best finish of the season couldn't come at a better time for him. But he's still got a fair way to go to catch Dylan Call ahead of him. Another man missing tonight who's on 270 points to Brett's 227 as it stands with a race to go. So a little bit of moving in the order in that race, but a couple of guys with some good solid results and making some nice little moves on the championship table.
Yeah, a little bit of movement, and there's still going to be more movement to come. So even with, probably would expect Danes to probably pick up, I don't know if it'll be a points penalty, but it's certainly going to be a penalty, I'd assume, at some point for one of the 2 incidents that he has. And even if it is a points penalty, he should still, provided he finishes, this second race, he should still move up in the championship anyway. And then, we've got Willis not too far away, moving up. And Hugo is going to be holding on for dear life if he has another race or 2 like he had there. But I think he's just here tonight just to pick up some championship points and keep the scoreboard ticking over from his end. But going to be an important race, I think, this one for the championship. We are in that middle point of the season. You can set yourself up with a good start to the second half of the season, or you could start a little bit of a rot, which obviously you don't want to do, but it's going to be a tricky circuit, and it being reverse grid as well, it can throw some spanners in the works, and you can have an incident on the tour if things don't quite go your way.
We have a look at the calendar too when we bring up the championship calendar, just to give everybody an idea of how things are going to work. So of course we are there at round 9 tonight, which is a pair of 15 lap races. It's also a pair of 15 lap races for the following round at Bahrain. So night track that sort of flows probably a little bit better than Singapore. It's a little bit longer too, but we expect the lap time will be slightly less in terms of time, but those are 15 lap races as well. Quarter Park's going to go quick, a pair of 18 lap races. Same for Sandown, will be a pair of 18 lap races. Lakeside, probably the shortest of all the tracks left on the calendar, going to be 18 laps as well. And then Winton and Newcastle will end up being a pair of 20 lap races. So you can get an idea based on the size that some of those circuits are as to how much time that the drivers are going to have to put in. Some of those races are going to go quick between now and the end of the season, and some of them are going to be a little bit longer. So drivers have just got to be a little bit, I guess, calculated as to which tracks they feel they're going to be strongest at, and maybe put in a few more extra practice nights if they want to get a good result as we get ever closer to the end of the season.
Yeah, I do wonder with Winton being on the calendar if they're going to run the more historic layouts. I think it got changed in the mid to late 90s, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, where it used to be a lot shorter than what the supercars and TCR and all that stuff race at nowadays. I wonder if it's going to be the short version or the long version. Probably the longer one, I'd have to guess, because not many people, I don't think I've seen the shorter track actually modelled in any sim, except maybe AMS, but I could be wrong. Newcastle's going to be an interesting one as well. And Lakeside, he said 18 laps or was it 20 laps around there? That's going to be a very, very quick round there.
Yeah, 18.
That's going to go in. You're going to be, I'd assume, doing lap times under a minute. So might be looking at 50 or 45 seconds there. If the cars are pretty quick. So that's going to be a very, very quick round. And it's also going to be quite busy in that reverse grid race because it is a very short and very busy racetrack.
And a very narrow one to boot as well. Everyone forgets how narrow that Lakeside circuit is from time to time. And coming back to your point, as you mentioned about Winton, I'm not 100% sure yet which layout it is. I'm assuming that it's going to be the current national circuit layout as it stands right now. So that is the 3 kilometre layout. The club circuit, as it's called nowadays, was up in existence with ATCC and supercars until 1996 was the last year that particular layout was run, the 2 kilometre layout. So instead of branching off and turning to the left at turn 9, it turned right, and then a very short shoot into the last 2 turns, which effectively are the modern turn 1 and 2 in today's layout. So at this stage, we're not 100% sure, but it would be great to see the old girl back, actually. It would be great to see the more old-timer layout, I guess we can call it, come back into being.
Be a very busy racetrack, that's short. Be very short, very busy, and reverse grid race would be pretty hectic.
Right, now speaking of reverse grid and hectic, it looks like it's going to be Higginson on the pole. So that's all been sorted. We've now got him lights ablaze. He doesn't have to worry about a safety car being in front of him this time around because he's got the pole and we are go.
I saw a car move there from Lion Mitch, so I don't know if he's going to end up with a drive-through or something here. But Higo leads into turn 1. He's got Ozrob, who's got a flying but he's been tagged.
He's been tagged.
Liccardo.
Was it Liccardo or was it one of the Volvos? Because there's a Volvo in the fence as well. It's sort of happening back. And there's a huge contact as well. Liccardo's been run into by, who's that? That's around at the back. It's Dan Curvis. So very, very messy start to this second race. We did expect there was going to be a bit of chaos, and it looks like Rhodey's Racing in the chat's got his wish. A little bit more death, but Higginson's bolted. Lion Mitch is up to P2.
Yeah, so Lion Mitch doing Lion Mitch things. And it was actually a bigger gap coming out at turn 3, but Lion Mitch has actually made up a little bit of time. And John Wright now coming under attack from
Lion Mitch has done exactly the same thing that he did in race 1. Gone off the circuit.
Also had Liccardo run into the back of Willis as well. And he's made more contact.
Oh no!
Although I think that time that was actually, it was either Wright, I think it was Wright, but it may have been Willis there. And I got Lion Mitch has been stuck with Ozrob, I think. It was stuck there, but it is absolute carnage at the moment.
Yep, and John Wright's
ordinary driving.
John Wright's got to try and find a way to loop this car here. Oh, he hasn't been able to flick spin. He's going to have to get reversed in 3-point turn, and he's going to be stone cold motherless last. And that all kick-started. I think Liccardo was having a bit of a look down the inside at, I think it might have been in turn 8. And I'm not sure if it was just off camera because we were looking back. And Higginson, race leader, the man who led the race, has had a massive fall from grace. He's gone off at turn 13, so the race has gone off completely on this opening lap. Cars going off left, right and centre. Rosella going off the back of the grid's found his way up to 4th. Lion Mitch was P2, went down the runoff road at turn 7. Higginson's had a moment. Liccardo's had contact with people and finds himself in the head of the race. Shannon Wright's kept his nose clean somehow to end up P2 and threatening Liccardo, but the man who did everything right, bar get the final lap completed in the last race in Luke Rosella, is sitting pretty at the moment, 4th place. And Brett Willis, geez, hasn't he had a pretty decent start? Another one to keep his nose clean, 3rd on the road as it stands right now as they come to complete lap 1.
Yeah, he's sort of caught up in some of that incidents as well, but he's not too far away. He's got the curb at the penultimate corner, got up on 2 wheels. Rosella's been balked by every one of the incidents so far, so it's actually quite remarkable that he finds himself 2 seconds off the race lead, because yeah, the exit of turn 3 he got balked as Liccardo outbrakes himself at turn 1, and Shannon Wright finds his way into the lead already. And now Willis coming under a lot of pressure from Rosella right behind him. But yeah, Rosella, in every one of the incidents that happened, he got caught out and slowed down in pretty much all of them. But he's actually not too far away from the lead. So he's done a really good job avoiding incidents to start with and to not lose too much time to boot.
And here goes Rosella as well. Round the long way at the very fast turn 6, fastest turn on the circuit. And very firmly down the inside there. A little bit of panel rubbing, that's all fair. And
well, he gave him plenty of room.
Yeah, he was more focused on trying to make the apex coming into turn 7. And yeah, just a little bit of rubbing on corner exit, but that won't bother Brett too much. That was a fair pass. He was far enough alongside, was Luke Rosella. And now he sets himself out after Dane Liccardo.
John Wright in the pits as well. Liam Mitch down in 8th place, and got Higginson and Osdrop time to recover after opening lap shenanigans. But Rosella already onto the back of Liccardo here.
Now if Liccardo can play it smart here, he just let Luke Rosella go and then just try and tag onto him. But I get the impression that Dane's not like that. He's probably going to try and fight it. I was a bit worried that Brett Willis wasn't going to be able to stop the Volvo for a minute there down to turn 14.
You just see though that Rosella a lot more confident around this track, setting up his corners a lot better as Liccardo took a much shallower line and subsequently outbroke himself.
And now he's given, I was about to say, had Liccardo given up the ghost there?
Not really, and there may have been a little bit of a tweak.
Late send, Brett Willis, opportunistic dive at turn 19, and he gets that done. So the question is, can he hold it? Dane's going to try and find a way back down this. Big contact!
Yeah.
Big contact! And that, I think, may have been just a heat of the moment issue. And if Dane wasn't in enough trouble as it is already, I think that one might just finish the job.
Yeah, that is not a pretty manoeuvre.
And this is now awkward as well because where Brett has rejoined Nankervis and Liam Mitchell to try and ran him up as well. But Brett will be a bit furious under that helmet, and I don't blame him.
Yeah, he'll be quite grumpy because I think was it him that got caught up in something like that in race 1 as well, or something similar. So yeah, he certainly could have had a much better night, but it's just been unfortunately bopped a couple times. So he's not going to be too pleased. Out front though, it looks like Shannon Wright's made some setup changes and he's finding himself in the lead, and looks like he's sticking there. Rosella at the moment not quite closing things down as fast as what we would have thought, considering his pace in qualifying and in race 1.
No, it'll be this lap though where we get probably a true indication of what Rosella can do versus Shannon Wright. Shannon Wright 228.9 for the last lap around, first proper flying lap on lap 2, whereas everybody else behind him setting PB. So Rosella's best of 31.4, and he did have some traffic to contend with as well on that lap, having to get past Brett Willis initially and then Dane Liccardo a bit later on, so probably lost a little bit of time. But that gap at the moment is just hovering around the 4 to 4.1 second mark, and we'll now start to get an idea about if he's matching the lap times or if he's going to set it up for a little bit later on in this race.
He may have also a little bit of damage as well. He has been through the walls a little bit in this race in the opening lap or two, so that may compromise some of his speed, but the gap looks to be just stabilised really at about that 4-second mark, with it coming down to a hair under 4 seconds to a hair over 4 seconds. So looks like that's pretty stable at the moment. But these guys are just driving away from the rest of the field. With actually the closest battle on track between Higginson and Ozrob. There's a little bit of lag there, and Ozrob's disappeared and DNF there. So it looks like he's at a PC or internet issue.
Yeah, he's out of this one, looks like.
Looks like it compromised Nathan Higginson a bit too there, because he's actually lost a bit of time, and he's got actually Nan Curvis and Lyle Mitchell are battling right behind him, starting to close him down.
Oh, fastest laps just got traded as well. Shannon Wright, 228.7, immediately eclipsed by Luke Rosella with a 228.4. So it's game on at the front for positions 1 and 2 at the minute. As Higginson, the only driver running headlights out there at the moment. Now, it wasn't mandatory that they had to run them because the circuit is floodlit. I'm not sure if you got the MO about that before the race started, but at the moment, P4 for Higginson. What lap time did he do last time around? 38.9. So he's continued to find a little bit of time, lap after lap and race to race, although he's still going a little bit sideways at a few corners.
His car won't like that in a couple of laps' time, that's for sure. But at the moment, he's starting to find his feet just a little bit. But he's going to have to find it pretty quick, because Lyle Mitch has got by Nan Curvis, and he's going to set his sights on the black and green BL just down the road.
Yeah, not much further to go, and I think Lyle Mitch's pace advantage comfortably is going to round him up, although a bit more sideways movement, a bit more opposite lock for Lyle Mitch. I think he's just enjoying himself as much as Nathan Higginson is, and he's only been doing this for about an hour now. Nice drift. What a drift. Cue the Tokyo Drift theme music going through turn 9.
Well, under the lights, he could be mistaken for being in Tokyo at night time, and certainly from the movie, but he's hanging it loose out there at the moment, and I don't think his car's going to like that if he continues, as we've seen Higo do in the past, and overuse those rear tyres. But he's still hanging in there, but he could be a little bit closer if he's a little bit straighter. And Nan Curvis behind him also getting a little bit sideways and loose out of the hairpin there, so he's having a dip as well. Yeah,
loose and full of juice, I think, is the statement I've heard once or twice before. And yeah, the cars will be filled with juice. Oh, he's... Oof. I was a bit worried then that Lyle Mitch had just overcommitted slightly into turn 14, because the car very violently mounted the curb on the inside right, and he struggled to get that car pointing the right direction again. Well, I think Higginson may have just given the wall a bit of a clip on the run out of 17, and now he's having to go ultra defensive, and this is costing Lyle Mitch time now. The more that he spends under the rear wing of the 00, the worse it is, because these Volvos behind him, Nan Curvis and Willis, are going to start to close this gap down.
When you go defensive and compromise your lines like that, it costs you a bucket load of lap time. Yep. It might keep you in front, but it loses you a heap of lap time. Higo probably doesn't care too much about it at this stage, because he's not the quickest, because he hasn't done that much practice. But it's just going to make it more difficult when drives behind a little bit further back start to catch him.
Ultra defensive line 2, saying to Lyle Mitch, you went past me, go the long way around, I want the inside. But Lyle Mitch says, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to go right around the outside, and I'm going to steal fourth place away from you.
They've gone side by side through turns 1, 2 and 3 there, and there hasn't been any contact. So these guys showing the rest of the field how it's done. And
Lyle Mitch will consolidate this at turn 5. Or will he? No, gone deep. And Higginson says, you silly old bugger, I'm going to be...
Then Curvis, he's lost the rear end and into the fence. And his teammate's just coming around the corner. Willis has got nowhere to go.
Oi!
Very
nearly an aeroplane disaster between the teammates. I think from Jamie's perspective, that would have just, his eyes would have just lit up and just said, oh, there's an opportunity for me to sneak down the inside here and grab a spot, and just got a little bit too greedy and a little bit too happy on the loud pedal and rotated the number 018.
Yeah, thankfully we avoided Tenerife there. It was very, very close, but...
I'm probably the only person that gets that reference, Lewis.
I'm sure there's someone in there that is into their aviation. Oh no, that's Nan Curvis. He's tried to do a Lyle Mitch impression, and he's not quite done it as stylishly, and he's lost time. And looking in the chat, Termo saying he wishes he was out there, but he's going to upgrade his PC, but it didn't go to plan. So hopefully we do see Termo get his PC sorted and upgraded at some point soon, and he's back out there racing. So a bit of a shame you're not out there, but hopefully we can see you back out there soon.
Yeah, I believe, if memory serves me correctly, he was in line for a new graphics card. I think one of the 3000 series NVIDIA cards, and probably might be a bit more power hungry than he might have been expecting, unless I'm thinking about some other sort of issue that he's got. But I do recall him saying he was in the process of organising one of those.
Yeah, I think he'd already bought one, so it was just all about putting it together. But yeah, a bit of a shame, but hopefully they get sorted and we can see him soon. Back at the front though, Rosella now finally onto the back of Shannon Wright. Now I do wonder if Shannon Wright is in the lead at the end of this lap, does he make the decision to come into the pits and try and undercut and keep those tyres nice and fresh and maintain quick lap time, or does he just stay out? And if he does stay out, this is the dilemma he's going to have. Luke Rosella could then come into the pits, put fresh tyres on and go faster again. So when you are in the lead in these situations, it's an awkward position to be in when you've got someone right behind you, because each decision you can make, the guy that is slightly quicker than you can make a different decision and make it work for them. So in the end, he's got to go with his gut at this situation and figure out whether he comes in and guns it or stays out and hope that Rosella makes a mistake in his own strategy.
Yeah, you're spot on there. I think if you're playing the percentage game, it's about a 1% chance, I think, for Shannon Wright to stay ahead of Luke Rosella with a pit stop planning going the way that it is at the moment. It's certainly not going to be a little bit less than that if he keeps doing things like that off of turn 13. But yeah, Luke Rosella's got the high ground on strategy here. He can afford to, he can undercut it, he can overcut it, he can play this game any way that he wants it. Shannon would really have to lift his game to a completely different level to cover off any attack from Rosella to whatever method he decides to do it.
And haven't seen Shannon Wright be under this kind of pressure before, because at Barbagallo, when he did have Scott Nolan for company, they had sort of separate races at the time. They weren't really directly on circuit together from memory. So this is really one of the first times I've seen Shannon Wright come under a lot of pressure, and Rosella is applying the blow torches. And does our race leader come into the pits? No, he does. No,
yes, he does. Late decision.
And Rosella's going to follow.
Oh, he's overcommitted. And no, that's a. Oh.
I wonder if it might have been an idea for Rosella seeing that just to go straight over the side and continue on a lap. But he's like, no, I'm going to pit the same time you do, and we'll settle this battle on the track.
Well, that's an interesting battle. Now, Rosella has got the option now of just sort of sitting back there and just picking his moment as well. Now,
Lion Mitch out. Lion Mitch has, it said he was out, but he's actually back, so perhaps some internet drama going on there for a second.
So Liccardo now will go through and lead this race. There's Lion Mitch in background. Yep, he is definitely still going. And that was Lion Mitch's best lap of the race too, the last time around as well. Liccardo overcommits to turn one. It's not the first time we've seen him do that. It won't be the last either. Now, Shannon Wright is out of the pits, and he's actually made time on Luke Rosella as well.
I wonder if Rosella's added a little bit of fuel or something, and it's made for a longer pit stop there. But with the pace that we have seen, because he's lost about 3 seconds in that whole sequence, because he was right behind Shannon Wright. It has to be some kind of fuel, or he's maybe repaired a bit of damage to take a little bit of extra time. We have seen him cruise up to the back with Shannon Wright once before, but now it is for the marbles, and he's going to have to make a pass on the circuit.
A couple of comments coming through in the live chat as well about the pit entry for the two drivers that we just saw come into the pits for Shannon Wright and Luke Rosella. Whether or not that's classed as an incorrect pit entry, because what he's done, Shannon Wright, is overshot the pit lane entry. The late decision has meant that he has bowled it over the white lines, and then he's come back on incorrectly into the pit lane. So because he's done that, perhaps that then constitutes an incorrect pit entry. If it was a real racing, that would be a 100% drive-through penalty at the end of the race. I'm not sure how stringent or lenient the stewards are for that kind of situation here in ACADS, but if we can only go off what I guess has been judged, and I think if it's not reported as such, then it's not going to be looked at. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens at the end of the race.
It's one of the few pit lanes in the world where you can actually do that. So you don't have too many where you've got a couple corners and there's no walls on between the circuit and the pits. But yeah, if there had been a car that was going around the final corner at that stage and he'd done that, that would have been a pretty big accident and would be, I'd imagine, a slam dunk penalty. Because they're out on their own and it didn't really affect anyone else except for Luke, that had to sort of back up a little bit as he was going to the pits as well. He may get away with it, but yeah, I'm not quite sure what the ruling is in this series regarding the pit entry there.
Well, and this is interesting because here come the two VL Commodores, and they've managed to get themselves around there as well. Now, Lime Mitch had managed to get past Dane Liccardo. I think had made a mistake on that previous lap because Liccardo did lead across the line.
Because he was well in front of Lime Mitch, and his previous lap before this one was a 2-minute 40, I think. So there you go. And Termo in the chat quoting the iRacing spotter. They say you've cut the course. You have to slow down and give up the time gain. So it's a bit of a meme going around in sim racing. It's one I use quite often when I see people cutting the track, like Steve Burko at Albert Park in practice. So if you see someone extending a corner, they're just doing a Burko out there.
Yeah, there's a few of those that are doing the rounds, I think, as well. A few guys love to get the scaphisms in every time or in every opportunity that they can. I think Luke Rosell is no stranger to that. We actually have had him in commentary in AMS Oz a little bit, and I think it was the Phillip Island round, and I think that all he did the whole night was just spit off scaphisms. So that's his way of doing commentary. So be it. That's all fine.
It's good to have commentators that get excited, because I do watch it, being a sim racer, I do go around and do watch a fair amount of, other series when I get the chance, say in iRacing and R Factor 2 and the like. And there's nothing worse, for me at least, if you've got commentators that just drone on and they don't have any passion behind it. That's something that both Hans, who does the Supercars commentary and obviously good friends with Luke and myself, he can get quite passionate, which can be a good and bad thing depending on what's happened on the circuit and who's done it. And Luke Rosell, as we know, very, very passionate, and both of them fans of Scaife, and it's always good to have a bit of entertainment, a bit of a laugh, and a bit of passion as well. It does make it a lot more enjoyable to watch along, as well as when you do watch it back later, that the commentators are passionate about what's happening on the screen and giving it a fair shake.
Yeah, fair shake of the sauce bottle, I guess, is the Kevin Rudd way of putting it. And yeah, those guys, I think, probably have a shrine to Mark Scaife embedded somewhere in the bowels of their house that they go and pay homage to every night. Now, with all the pit stops...
Slow down for Rosella. Disaster. He got that gap under 2 seconds, and now he's 6 seconds behind.
So that was off of turn 21. Yeah, Shannon Wright, that's a perfect opportunity, or very well-timed PB for him to pull that out of the bag right when Luke Rosella didn't need it, and that's a 4-second swing. So the gap, as you said, was down to under just on 2 seconds, and that's now gone out to 6.5. So still quite a large number of laps to go. Rosella's going to have to pull out all the stops here, but that's a huge break for Shannon Wright. He had the high ground after the pit stops by having a couple extra car lengths, and now the mistake from Rosella has, I guess, made it very difficult for Rosella to win this race.
He's going to have to do 27s to close out this race if he wants to win it here, because Shannon Wright on that last lap did a personal best, I think almost for both races. He did 28.5, I think it was. I think a sim hum up, unfortunately, but it was certainly a quick time, and his quickest of this race. And Rosella is going to have to find at least a second lap with 6 laps remaining. He has taken out quite a large chunk already on this lap, down 8 tenths looking at the live timing, 9 tenths now. But he's going to have to drive the wheels off that VL And he's run a little bit wide there. It will compromise him a little bit, but he can't afford any more of those cuts, because if he does, it's game over.
Yeah, spot on. He's got the gap down now to 5 seconds, though, so he's found a lot of time on this lap, but I'm wondering whether or not Shannon Wright's just starting to encounter a bit of traffic. The answer to that is no, so maybe Shannon's had a bit of a tardy first or second sector of this lap, because that gap is, was out to 6.5 at the line. It's now a second and a bit's been wiped off it, so he's heeding your call here, Lewis, and he's rubbing the wall to go along with it.
He's having a crack. I think Shannon's realised already halfway through this lap that, oh no, Rosella's not giving up here, and he's got to get his foot on the gas here, because he has sort of just eked it out, but of course the VL not quite in the optimum sector for that car at the moment. So Rosella, at this part of track, really just has to sort of keep the gap steady, and then in sectors 1 and 2, bring it back down again. So he's found some time, but he's got to find more.
He's definitely going to find more now. He's going to be hoping for a little bit of lap traffic. I was just looking to see where that lap traffic happens to be, and it happens to be John Wright, and he's just up the road at turn 1 now, so not too far ahead of Shannon Wright. There's Rosella just emerging through the darkness at the back of shot at turn 23. Now, I don't think Shannon Wright's namesake, John Wright's going to pose too much of a problem in terms of lap traffic, but it's just going to be about where he catches him, and I think he'll be pretty forward in letting Shannon Wright go by without too much incident.
There shouldn't be too much of an issue. John's not really racing anybody, so when Shannon gets up to the back of him, should let him go. And Rosella was over a second faster on that last lap, faster than Shannon Wright.
Yeah.
But he's still, again, he's got to be relentless here, and even then, he's got to probably go even more than a second lap faster, because he's still got to set up a pass.
Yeah. And as we said, there you go. Nice, easy pass for John Wright. Lets Shannon Wright through quite comfortably. And you're right, the last lap time's around 2:29.2 for Shannon Wright, 2:28.1 for Luke Rosella. So only 0.2 of a second away from his race fastest lap was Luke Rosella on that previous tour, and it looks like Rosella has gotten through ahead of John Wright without too much trouble as well, so that's good for Rosella's cause, as it sets up a really nice finish to this race. You can see Rosella as well just using the curbs to perfection. He's obviously got it worked out just how much curb he needs to take at certain parts of the circuit. Sometimes it helps the car turn, sometimes it helps the car just roll through the corner and set up and stay on the racing line just nicely for the next part of the course. But he's got that worked out to perfection. But if he just steps a little bit too far over that line, as he did down at the exit of turn 21 a couple of laps ago, the game says you've chewed up a bit too much racetrack there, please, and you need to scrub off a bit of speed so you can give back any time that you have gained.
Yeah, so he still needs to find a little bit more time here on this lap. He's just got it under, at least for a split second there, under 4 seconds. He's driving that car hard. He hasn't made the mistake like he did last time at the left-hander just after the bridge. And they're going to cross the line with the gap at about 4 seconds, so it looked like it's going to be a bit of a grandstand finish here.
29.5 for Shannon Wright.
28.1 again.
Yep. So that was a big swing that time for Luke Rosella. Found a lot more time. That was 1.4 seconds as opposed to 1.1.
Oh, he's mucked it up at turn 1. He's not going to lose too much time there, but he's just outbroke himself a little bit, lost the rears a little bit, and that almost might give the race to Shannon Wright there, unless he makes a bit of a blue himself here.
I reckon that's cost him about 3 to 4 tenths of a second there, and he's a little bit off the ideal line for turn 5 as well. So that gap, you can see it's ballooned out now. It's gone out to back out to 5 seconds. It was right on 4 when they came across the start-finish stripe last lap. All that work that he did on the previous lap has just evaporated in a handful of corners. And this is really the only close battle that's on track. The rest of it's all pretty much settled down as we look through the field line. Mitch has got daylight to Luke Rosella in second place, and he's comfortable in third. Dane Liccardo, after his trouble being in the wars with a few other cars, in P4. Brett Willis just turned his fastest lap of the race, and so too did the man in 6th place, Jamie Nankervis. So these two are not that far apart. but Jamie just only 0.4 of a second quicker than Brett, but that's not going to be enough with 5 laps remaining. And then the man who started on pole, 2:39.9 that time around, and that is some considerable margin off his best lap. Higginson, believe it or not, has got his best lap down to a 2:31.5, which is on a par with Jamie Nankervis and Brett Willis. It's actually faster than the pair of them, even faster than Dane Liccardo's fastest lap as well. So he's really found something on his quickest lap, but it's completely fallen off a cliff now. He's about 8 seconds away from that time. And then the last man on the circuit is 1 lap down in John Wright, and he's just out there just circulating, make sure he picks up some points at the moment.
Yeah, so he's got pace, obviously, in that car. He just doesn't have the touch, the consistency due to his lack of practice. He just can't quite put it together lap after lap, but that is quite a solid time.
Oh, he's another one. And that's it. That'll be game over. He was already about 5.5 seconds down, so he'd lost more time throughout the lap, and that's just now handed the race win, I think, to Shannon Wright. There's no way coming back from this.
And if I'm being honest, he didn't really cut that corner. So obviously the way the track cuts work in this game, and this track is probably a bit too harsh there, but unfortunately for Rosella, it's going to cost him a chance of victory here in this one. He'd already lost a bit of time on that last lap anyway. I think he's just overused those rear tyres. So I think because he was driving so hard to close that gap down, he's just overheated the rear tyres, and he hasn't been able to use or drive the car as well as he would have hoped. And he'd already lost a little bit of time after the mistake at turn 1 on the last lap anyway. So it was going to be unlikely, but unfortunately now it's pretty much over, barring some kind of drastic turnaround.
Yeah, there's no lap traffic in the way for Shannon Wright at the moment. He's got a huge amount of clear racetrack between himself and Nathan Higginson, who's the next man that Shannon Wright would lap, but Higginson is still, at least a quarter of a lap ahead at the moment. And now this race pretty much just, I guess, settles back into the groove, doesn't it, Lewis? Everyone's sort of got a little bit of margin on everybody else. The only one that's really starting to go a different direction is Liccardo and Lime Mitch. Now, Liccardo was miles faster on the previous lap. He was some 3.5 seconds quicker. I think it was just a tardy lap for Lime Mitch. But, outbreaks himself going into, turn 7 here. I'm going to keep an eye on how this gap's coming down as well, because in terms of points finishes, even if Dane is to grab, not grab, that's probably the wrong word, is to inherit or be awarded some post-race penalties for some of the contact that we've seen tonight, every position that he can get is going to be very, very important from a standings point of view, because if he loses some of those advantages, he's not going to lose as many as he would if he finishes where he is right now.
Yeah, he needs to, I guess, do what he can to try and get himself in front of Lime Mitch to sort of mitigate some of the penalties that he's probably going to accrue here. But it's also important as well that he doesn't make mistakes at the back end of this race, because the race is in a bit of a lull at the moment, and it's easy when you haven't really got too much to fight for, but the gaps behind and in front of you aren't all that big. So in Brett Willis's position, he's only 7 seconds in front of Nankervis with a couple laps to go, and you think, well, that battle's over. All it takes is a lapse in concentration, you spin, and then he's behind Nankervis. Nankervis himself is 21 seconds. It is a long time, but it is a street track, and if you spin at the wrong point, you might have to Austin Powers the car out of position and cost yourself 25 seconds and lose that position. Same goes for Lime Mitch and for Shannon Wright, where if they're not focusing completely, they could find themselves losing a position. So that's something to look out for in the dying moments of this one.
Having a look at the lap times that Liccardo and Lime Mitch just posted as well. Lime Mitch a second slower, or actually more than a second slower, 1.5 seconds slower than Liccardo. Now, you've got to remember too, these guys came in on the same lap to complete their compulsory pit stop too. So they've got the same rubber on. Lewis will probably confirm for me, they're both running the medium tyre. but it's about how they've used it since the pit stops.
Yeah, both on the all the VL cars, I believe. Actually, no, Higginson, my mistake. He's actually on the soft tyre at the moment, but Liccardo, Mitch, and Rosella all on the mediums, with all the Volvo runners and BMW runners on the softs. So that's a bit of an advantage these lighter cars have, is they're able to run the soft tyres without melting them at every track. And yeah, the VL, big power, a bit heavier, and not as kind to the soft tyres, so that's why those guys are on the mediums. But yeah, it looks like Liccardo's done a bit of a better job at looking after his tyres. He's probably also maybe just found a bit of a groove at the back end of this race, and it also helps, as you know, with someone dangling the carrot in front of you, one of your favourite sayings.
Yep.
You know, you've got Mitch right there in front of him. You do drive better, or some drivers anyway, drive better when they've got someone just in front of them, or if they've got someone right behind them as well. Sometimes it does get the best out of a driver if there's, you know, something to be gained or lost.
I think someone would be, you know, it would be right up my alley if someone was to make a mod that you would just be chasing carrots all day around a racetrack, because there's a few people I know that like to have that carrot in front of them, especially in this series, AMS Oz. I think the most famous one we talk about is Sam Smith in ARW, one of the leagues that I participate in, to the point where the broadcasters actually put a carrot on the broadcast in front of his car so they could actually see him chasing the carrot. So I think that'd be quite funny if there was, you know, like a little carrot just like dangling off the back of a car or something, and someone else could be chasing after it. That would just make my day. But right now, the carrot for Dane Liccardo is the gold number 2 Commodore of Mitch, and big slide and huge amounts of opposite lock for Liccardo coming out of the last chicane. Has he found some more time in this particular lap? He's only got 2 more laps to go. The answer is yes. He found another 0.8 of a second, so this gap between 3rd and 4th place is now down to 0.8 of a second. There is not much in this at all.
Yeah, so you don't really want to make a mistake here, because it will either cost you a chance at a podium position or will cost you a podium position if you are Mitch. And Liccardo, big slide, big lock up. He's just starting to overdrive a bit now, and I'd also say after the slide earlier on, he's probably overcooked those rear tyres as well. So
yeah, that
he's
might
going to have to refocus and drive a bit straighter here, I think, because if he doesn't, he's just going to keep sliding and he's just going to lose time and not have a chance to overtake Mitch at the back end of this race.
I was about to say he let Mitch off the hook there very, very easily and got another lap and a half to try and wrestle that 3rd place away. But you're right, if he overdrives the car too much, he's going to find himself in a whole world of hurt at the back end of this race. Our race leader just got a handful of corners to go for the penultimate lap, and then he will be greeting the white flag this time around, which signifies the last lap is about to commence.
Yeah, so the gap out front, 8.6 seconds, right? Probably just not driving at 100%. He's been quite consistent in the mid to high 29s at the back end of this race. Rosella is in the low 29s, still a little bit quicker, but his chances of a victory done. And it's all about this battle now between Mitch and Dane Liccardo.
And this is now closed up quite a lot since we last looked at it about 30 seconds ago as well. So Mitch is now getting sideways and in the fence. In the fence on the approach to the second last chicane. And if Liccardo didn't need a carrot hanging in front of him, he doesn't need any more incentive to keep the heat on the back of this number 2 Commodore, because at some point, and there it goes again, another in moment into the fence. So I think Mitch is starting to feel the heat. If it's too hot, get out of the kitchen. But Liccardo now starting to throw the kitchen sink at Mitch.
I think it's more a case of Mitch just starting to make some mistakes here. Mitch 7/10 slower on that last lap, and Liccardo didn't exactly have a great lap himself either. So here we go. One of the big passing opportunities is turn 4, and then a little bit further down the road as Line Mitch is sideways again. Again, this is just be encouraging for Liccardo. He's just got to keep it smooth now and try and set up a move here as Line Mitch has lost the rears just a little bit. He's fighting to get the car in. He's fighting to get the car out as his Liccardo's are doing a bit of synchronized drifting out of turn 5. And now the long run through turn 6 and to turn 7.
Did either of them outbrake themselves into turn 7? No, but Liccardo just closes up so much at turn 7. He found a huge amount of time, just got through turn 7 really neatly. And where's the next pass going to come? It's going to be down into turn 10 if Liccardo tries to narrow up the approach for a late dive at 9. But no, he's not close enough to have a dip here at turn 10.
No, Mitch is known for finishing in 4th position. He won't want that here, but it's going to be a chance. Up the front though, we've got Shannon Wright with 2 corners to go. He's going to take 2 from 2. A little bit lucky in race 1 with Rosella having some issues at the back end on the penultimate lap, or the start of the final lap for him, but he's been perfect tonight. And Rosella, he's going to come home 8 seconds behind. He'll be ruining the mistakes he made and the track cuts that he picked up. But he's shown that he's quite a talent and very, very quick in the VL Commodore. But back to the battle between Line Mitch, Dane Liccardo for the final spot on the podium.
Yeah, spot on. So Shannon Wright makes it 6 wins in a row and 10 wins on the season from 17 races. And this battle looks like it'll be decided in the favour of Line Mitch at the current moment, unless there's a late mistake here. Now, the only spot that we've seen it happen, we saw it happen to Luke Rosella, is this last chicane here. Can they get through neatly? Yeah, Line Mitch, I think, is going to hold on here.
Use that wall quite a bit there next at the third last corner there. He's just got to navigate the final 2 corners. He'll come home in 3rd place, will he? Yes, he will.
He does.
And he avoids the meme of 4th Mitch with Dane Liccardo taking home P4.
So Liccardo had a good shake at it at the last part of that race. Threw everything he had at Line Mitch. Ultimately comes up just a little bit short. And unfortunately, again, has a couple of question marks over his head. Number 20 of Brett Willis gets home for 5th place. So 4th and a 5th for Brett is not a bad night's work. And that actually only puts him 5 points in arrears of Dylan Call in 8th place as well. So Brett will be very happy with his night's work. Jamie Nankervis, I think, will probably be a little bit less pleased after all that one, given that he was caught up in a few dramas in that race. And then our last 2 finishes, Nathan Higginson, 7th place finish. So he keeps those points ticking over, keeps himself ahead of Liccardo, Nankervis and Marwood. That's how the standings are currently at the moment. Not factoring in any points, although he got a bit wide at the second last corner.
I think he's just showing off there.
Yeah, we've
also got some news from Neil Crompton in the pits. He's going to lift the lid on supposedly Line Mitch has illegally fueled his car here. He's got illegal fuel in the car and might find himself disqualified.
We'll wait to see what comes out of that one. Whether or not he's actually got the illegal fuel on board. Maybe he'll be in there trying to disguise that as much as possible. Maybe he's got some fuel out of the secret barrels of wine that are in the tyre bundles that make up the safety barriers of this circuit. Well, Lewis, what do we make of that? What an interesting night's racing at a circuit that we were sort of querying coming into the night, going, how are the cars from the 70s and 80s going to handle a street circuit more akin to Formula One? The answer is pretty darn well, save for a few incidents in the early goings on the laps in both races.
Yeah, it can be, part and parcel really of full reverse grid races, where you do see, slower guys starting at the front, and then you've got the fast guys that want to get to the front end of the field as soon as possible, and hopefully, and they're hoping to do it in a way that, their rivals get caught up in the traffic behind. So you can see some argy-bargy, some people sending it in some areas that they shouldn't, and sometimes there's just, drivers just making flat out mistakes. So did see that unfortunately here in race 2, but we also did see some good racing as well at the back end of the race and in the middle part of the race. But in the end, the races were decided by a couple of mistakes for a number of the runners, and also a little bit of bad luck as well.
Yeah, there was a few unlucky moments, I guess we can call it. The most unlucky moment was Luke Rosella in race 1. We're not quite sure what happened there, but of course he's made his comments in the live chat pretty clear that something was not quite right. And I think we've got him now, so let's have a chat to him about those 2 races, Lewis. Let's see what he's got to say.
Yeah, so Luke, it was a bit of a mixed bag. You had a heap of pace, but you couldn't quite bring home the chocolates in the end, with track cuts getting the better of you in the second race. And could you talk us through what happened at the back end of race 1? Because it looked like you had that race in the bag, and then you went straight back to the pits.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to the admin group here for holding this race. It was nice and fun. Yeah, I got a slow down on the second to last lap, or second to last quarter. Sorry. And I thought that it's like an iRacing slowdown where you physically slow down, and like there's a timer on the screen, but it wasn't like that. You had to actually, I didn't know this at the time, you had to slow down to 35 Ks, I think. So yeah, I didn't know that. Crossed the finish line, and yeah, brought me to the pits, and I was disqualified.
Oh, that's a bit of a shame, because you had absolutely dominated race number 1. Your second race, though, the first lap for you, from my vantage point, was quite interesting. Would you want to talk us through the? I guess you could say it was almost like traveling through a minefield with cars going off in front of you, left, right, and centre, that you had to avoid.
Yeah, bit crazy. Lots of incidents in front of me, probably due to lag, I think. It looked like it, but yeah, had to dodge a few cars. Got a bit. I think I got pretty hefty contact, so I don't know. Maybe maybe affected my pace a little bit, not too much, but yeah. And then I just concentrated on trying to catch. I think Shannon, right? I was catching him, and then had a couple of slowdowns. Slow down to 35k and lost heaps of time. But yeah, I was having fun up there, having a go, and yeah, I think it was a good race.
Well, it was good to see you having a dip out there. Couldn't quite bring home the chocolates tonight, but you certainly did put on a good show. Well done, mate.
Thanks, mate.
One of the other podium sitters for tonight was Lime Mitch. Lime, you had a second in race 1, and you had the kitchen sink being thrown at you there in that second race, with Dane all over the back of you for the better part of about 7 or 8 laps leading up to the finish, and you just managed to hold him off for that one. So you're probably pretty pleased with your night's work, I'd imagine, on debut. Well, it looks like we might have lost Lime Mitch, and he's not talking back to us at the moment.
Rest in peace, Live Mitch.
All right, well, we'll move.
Sorry.
There he is. He's probably off having a bit of a drink or something. Lime, we were just saying you had probably pretty happy with your night's work on debut with a pair of podiums, but you had the kitchen sink thrown at you by Dano in that last race for the better part of the last 7 or 8 laps.
Yeah, it was pretty intense racing, especially at the starts. Me and Dane seemed to have a few good scraps, even in race 1 as well. He was catching me quite considerably towards the end, so definitely put the pressure on me.
And it was interesting that he was catching you at the rate that he was, because the pair of you stopped on the same lap for your compulsory pit stop in that second race. Was it just a case of overusing the tyres just a little bit too much? We did see you a little bit sideways at plenty of corners. Did the rear tyres just start to go away a bit later on in the race?
Yeah, I lit them up a bit, probably a bit too early out of the first couple laps out of some of the corners, and overheated them, and so they were kind of just gone from there.
Well, pretty pleasing night for yourself, and 2 podiums on debut is not anything to be frowned upon. Job well done.
Thank you.
And the other man in that fight for most of those races was Dane Liccardo, with a 3rd in race 1, just missing out on another 3rd place in race 2. Dano, you're involved in quite a fair few scraps tonight. Not just the podium battles, but there was a few run-ins with a couple other drivers as well. Talk to us about some of those and how you saw your night paying out, mate.
Oh, there was, as I said, it was a decent night, I guess. It could have been a lot better. Couple of incidents, that were completely unavoidable. The one between me and Jamie went for the over-under, which wasn't much room. And then the one between me and Brett was coming out of the corner, and Brett just slammed on his brakes and left me nowhere to go.
I think we might have not. I think we saw the Jamie Nankervis one with that one comes to our mind. I'm not sure if we saw the other one. Of course, the stewards will probably take a bit of a look at that one. Talk to us about those closing laps with Lime Mitch. I mean, he obviously was sweating bullets a little bit, that you're all over his tail, but you just couldn't quite find a way past in those closing laps.
No, I thought it would be a good idea to compete in Formula Drift in that last lap, so I couldn't quite catch him.
So it looks like you must have overcooked your tyres as well.
Yeah, probably not the rate that Mitch did, because I've had a fair bit of experience with these tyres, and I guess car control with these cars, because in practice I do get a bit bored and do a bit of drifting, and I guess it's come in handy.
Comes after you following Nathan Higginson around too much, I think, mate. So you'll
well, maybe I picked up a few things from being in a team with him now.
Well, we'll cue the Tokyo Drift theme music after this, and you guys can have it off, and we'll see who's the better drifter. But good job, mate. You've done a good haul of points, and look forward to seeing you next week for the final race, I guess, of 2020 before we have a bit of a mid-season break.
Alrighty, thank you.
Lewis, how about our race winner, mate? He amazes me that he's not been off the podium at all for every race that he's contested so far, and he just keeps going.
Well, both himself and Luke were in a class of their own in qualifying, and pace-wise, in both the races, they just drove away from everybody. Even early on, where they had to fight their way through the field, I mean, they got their way through, and Shannon in particular had to pick his way through the field, and he really did set up his race there in race number 2 by getting himself through all the carnage early on, and ended up, building that race win at the start of race 2. And he did get a little bit lucky, it has to be said, at race 1, but you still have to put yourself in a position where you can capitalise on the guy in first making a mistake or having an issue, and he certainly did do that. And 2 from 2, Shannon, great driving, and you have to withstand the pressure in the midpoint of race 2, and you took home a well-deserved 2 victories tonight. Well done.
Thanks very much, guys. But quality driving from Luke, mate. I was under pressure, even though it was a bit of a gap. You can see that, if I made a mistake, he was there on me. First race, look, I feel so sorry for him, but it is what it is, and we all know that if you get a penalty, you got to back off a bit. But it is a shame. But mate, just stay consistent. I was happy for a second place, making myself ready for the next one, just working out where the car was going to be good and where it was going to be bad, and capitalised on it.
It certainly seemed that way, but earlier, in the midpoint of that race 2 there, Luke was coming. How was the car holding up? And just prior to the pit stops, you're in that awkward position where, you had a slightly faster guy behind you, and he could have undercut you, or you could have, tried to stay out. But you went in very, very late, and you mucked up the pit entry. Just talk us through your little excursion there through over the curbs and back into the pits there.
Yeah, I think I was just trying to make sure I got to the end of the pit lane limit, and then realised, hang on, no, I've just got to keep going, and accelerate a little bit, and went over the ripple strip, and was lucky to get it back in. But I set my car up with a lot more fuel in the first race, so obviously it used the tyres up a lot more. So by the time that Luke had got to me, I was getting to the stage where I was going to pit, so I thought if I can hold in there just that little bit more, when I pit, I'm going to have less fuel and new tyres, and as it showed, I was straight down to 28s.
Yeah, it certainly was. And, as Stephen said, haven't been off the podium all season. The way it's going, mate, it doesn't look like you're ever going to get off the podium. So well done on 2 very well-earned victories tonight.
Thanks, guys, and I'll dedicate that one to Terry, sitting on the sidelines and watching. I think he really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, we did see him flash up a couple of times in the live chat tonight, watching along from home. So hopefully we'll see Terry back for the last race of the season. Last race of the year, I should put it, before we have the mid-season break next week at the Bahrain International Circuit, the third of the trio of night races to take place on this calendar. If you're an avid viewer of this channel, please join us a bit later on this coming week on Thursday for Automobilista Australia's Supercars Championship from Sandown. It's retro round, and there'll be a handful of retro livery supercars out there competing for the 2 sprint races. And if you're a fan of the Assetto Corsa Aussie Down Under series, we'll see you in a week's time for round number 10 from the Bahrain International Circuit. Please drive safely, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.